Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for 2 minutes and we'll start.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Dr. Ajit. Maybe we can start in the interest of time. Our speakers have also joined.
Yes, I think we should start because now this is Monday and people will be transiting from, home to office, home to college students. So they'll be joining slowly.
And they'll be receiving recordings of the session, so no problem.
Definitely. And we are
Yeah,
live
yeah.
on the YouTube as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, yeah.
And our
Good
morning
morning, everyone.
speakers
Good morning,
have joined
everyone.
from the US, Dr. Ajit. So it's
Thank you.
already
So
very, yeah,
let's not let them wait. Yeah, please
sure.
start. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for joining, sir.
Hi,
Namaste.
Dr. Anuj.
Namaskar. Hello, Richa. How are you?
Very
How are
well,
you
Dr.
all?
Anuj. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. It's glad to see you, and thank you so much for taking our time. Being in the entirely different time zone
Yeah,
than India,
absolutely.
we really appreciate.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's always fun to talk on. And I have seen so much. I was there in an inaugural session,
Yes.
and there was so much. People are loving this thing, so that's wonderful. And there should be more like these things, by the way.
Thank you, Dr. Anuj.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ritul, over to you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day three of the HEOR Vanguard Conference 2025. I am Ritul Sharma, your host for the morning session. We have reached the final day of what has been an incredible journey of learning, discussion, and collaboration. Over the past 2 days, we explored the foundation of HEOR and RWE, examined their real world application, and understood how evidence drives better healthcare decision making. Today, we go ahead on the future of health economics and outcome research. This session will be highlight economic modeling, real-world data, and the growing role of artificial intelligence in transforming research and healthcare delivery. As we move on through the day, we'll also discuss the evolving global landscape, the intersection of research and clinical practice, and how innovation continues to redefine the way evidence shapes policy and outcomes. It's a day of reflection, inspiration, and forward thinking leading up to our valedictory. and award ceremony this evening, marking the successful completion of the HEOR Vanguard conference. Let's begin the final day with energy and curiosity as we continue to learn, connect, and create impact together. To begin our morning, we are delighted to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Anuj Babai, a distinguished expert in economics and mathematical modeling in healthcare. Dr. Babai, a fellow and collegiate Biomathematics Alliance and senior fellow at the Kalam Institute of Health Technology, brings over 15 years of global experience in health economics, outcome research, and infectious disease modeling. With a PhD in applied mathematics from Arizona State University, he has collaborated across academia, government, and industry, design data-driven health solution that shapes policy and improve patient outcomes. Having previously held leadership roles at IQVIA, Precision HEOR, and the Health and Public Health Company, Dr. Mubai specialized in computational modeling, health decision analysis, and cost-effective evaluation. His research has guided impactful strategies in public health, epidemiology, healthcare resource optimization. Today, he will be speaking on the topic economic modeling in HEOR, exploring how mathematical models and real-world data converge to inform better healthcare decisions and policy framework. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll have a short Q&A session after the talk, so please feel free to note down your question as we go along. Welcome Dr. Anuj Mubai with a warm round of applause. Over to you, sir.
Thank you.
Anuj, can you unmute? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ritul, for the kind introduction, and it's pleasure to be here. Hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. Before I actually let me put my screen first so that the slides are working, and then I will talk.
We can see.
Okay, awesome. So, well, it's pleasure to be here, and I know Dr. Richa Goel for some time, and we worked together also in. And I'm sorry, I should. This is what. This is one should not do, by the way. So this is something that you have to be very careful when you present a talk. So I always do it, but today I forgot. So as I was mentioning, I want to give a little bit of brief background how I get connected here. Well, Dr. Richa Goel and I worked together in an organization before, but also I have worked with Dr. Kavita Kachru, and I'm a fellow at Kalam Institute of Health Technology. And also, we are professionally connected through LinkedIn, all of us. We know each other somehow. I mean, at least some things we might have heard from each other's. So, well, I'm currently at Numerica IQ, which is a HEOR health economics modeling company, and Kalam Expert is the company in India. And let me go forward. Okay, so before I actually go and talk about more of myself and the work that I'm doing, I want everyone to respond to this thing so that I know what exactly we know about the topic that I will be discussing today. Dr. Richa, can you share the link, please?
Yes, hosting team, I sent one link in the morning. Can you please, you want us to share that in the chat, Dr. Anuj?
Yeah, sure.
That link?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you share that link in the chat?
Just a second.
Sure. Yeah, it's there. All the participants, please click on the link shared in the chat window. See, there's no right and wrong. Please
Yes,
don't
guys,
be.
answer.
Or let us answer, Dr. Ajit. Right.
So the question is, when you hear about health modeling, what comes to the mind? What is it used for example? And be short, like 1 or 2 word. That's what we are hoping to get out of it. And you should understand that meaning when it comes to your mind. So that word that you are telling has a meaning in your mind, for example. So okay, all of you might have seen this word or have heard or have used it, some models in your um, basically your work, your research, or your studies. Let's see if we can identify. So, what are we seeing here? Evidence generation, financial decisions, um, allocations. Very nice. Create, compare, evaluate. Okay, outcomes, uh, interventions, evaluation of interventions, effectiveness of the product. Okay, decision making. Perfect. Um, Evidence generation, of course. Systematic understanding. Very nice. Outcomes understanding. Okay, good. Um, so planning, I can see. Okay. What else I'm seeing? Remember, you have to understand that word. For example, I'm not sure about a few words, what exactly we mean, but let's keep going and want to see what is our understanding. So, I can see that some of you might have heard it or have read it about it or have used it in your practical research. I can see the type of work that you all have done. Um, so and actually the modeling work, let me go to the answer and say there is no right and correct answer, as Dr. Richa Goel was mentioning. There is the modeling work used for many different things, and that is why there are so many different understanding that you are seeing on this screen. So this is not one word. It is used for planning purpose. It is used for estimating something which you cannot estimate directly in the field. It is used for forecasting. It is used for comparing two products, for example. It is used for decision making, complex decision making, which it's not easy to write on a pen and paper 2 or 3 things. So models are used in many different ways, and you are all absolutely correct putting these words, keywords for the modeling. So thank you very much for this exercise. And now I think I want to highlight this aspect. It is not a tool to use everywhere. I mean, some places, yes, it might help you, but some places there are other tools, like survey tools are there, like um, uh, field research is there. There are different types of tools that people use to analyze the information, right? Field research is you go about taking interviews of people and writing notes and evaluating it. That is a model in the contextual sense. That is a language models. Whereas today's model, health economic models, are quantitative models, which are used for extracting the information that is not easily available sometimes from the field. Or you are connecting multiple data source and you want to extract the information of different data source and give the answer to your problem. Okay, so with that exercise, let me go further. What is going on? Okay. Okay, so where I am, so I am in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, the blue box that you are seeing here. And it's evening around 9-ish my time, 9 p.m. on Sunday evening. We are almost 12 and a half hours behind India time. And so Okay, so who I am, some of you may not know me. So my professional journey has been in a different areas. I was trained as an applied mathematician. I've done work with leading firms in US on disease modeling, neglected tropical disease, primarily leishmaniasis, dengue. Um, I've recently worked on COVID-19 quite a lot. And also working in a health economics decision science type of models and oncology, rare disease, vaccines, even chronic diseases some. So I was a faculty for a number of years in and worked in academia. Then I moved to industry and work as a consulting, and now I'm doing some of a policy advisory role as well in some organization. Okay. So I want to highlight some of the research that my lab has done in the past. So one research was highlighted maybe a decade ago, and it was in Through the Wormhole. It's a very famous series of Morgan Freeman, and the title of one of the session that Through the Wormhole, basically this through this series they highlighted novel work in certain different areas. So our work has been published on mass killings, mass shootings and mass killings, and we use a lot of models to address it. So it was highlighted by Morgan Freeman shows Through the Wormhole long time back, almost 10 decades ago. And the title of that series was Is the Gun Crime a Virus? So there they used our research, and the paper that we published was mentioned on the top. Um, we have been in some news channels also. Our work has been on a BBC channel. So this is on high school. Why high school students drop out? What is the reasons? What makes them drop out of the school? It's not always the study. It is many other things that makes up their social structure. So this was highlighted in BBC also in 2017, almost a decade ago. Um, we worked during COVID times for a state of Florida government, and we had some models that were tracking the infections in the county of or in the regions of Florida. So this was used during COVID outbreak. It's still being used, but not too much because COVID is not anymore. We have some work that airlines companies have been using, and that is our organization is called as VIPRA, Viral Infection Propagation Through Air Travel, VIPRA. And this work has been also in the news quite a lot in India as well. And we work with, so the goal here is when people travel in air travel, then how do they infect others? It is to understand that phenomena. How can we do controlling? You can't stop travel because people have different reasons for traveling all around the world. But what can you do to, what policies you can suggest that could be reduced? These infections can be reduced during air cover. Currently, our work has been in CDC also, Center for Disease Control, through the group that I'm working with. It is called computationalepidemiology.org. Basically, this computational epidemiology group, we are generating pathogen evolution and infection control, vaccine control, or vaccine distributions through this platform. And CDC is helping Center for Disease Control, which is a US pioneer body in disease control, has been using some of those work. Okay, so a lot about me, but now let's talk about, there's a lot of hype about AI. Well, so the question is, will all the work that we have learned in the school will all be vain, will all be wastage? The answer is no, no, really. It will transform, but it will not wipe out the work that we are doing. By the way, the PwC is a consulting company, very large consulting company. They did some analysis this year, and they say that there will be a lot of work, $1 trillion almost will be shifted to digital first care. So from the healthcare perspective, things will move quite rapidly to digital side. But um, and US spends a lot of money in healthcare, almost $8.6 trillion. T stands for trillions. And by 2035, this is expected 20% of the GDP. This is a huge. So when that much of expenditure, and this is true even in India and many other countries as well, huge investment percentage of GDP. So in order to take care of that much of cost, one needs to focus on something we call it as a value-based innovation or value-based analysis. And that is very key in that. But remember, all this hype is not completely true, because what we have seen in last few years is about 70% of tech innovations fails, literally fails in healthcare. So, or they fail to give ROI, return of interest, on the innovation or the work that you are doing. So there is some gap there. So only 30% are useful. I mean, so there's a lot of big news, but there is harsh lesson behind it that really one cannot. So very good example is, these are some of the things which failed in last 10 years. These are big AI models that failed. For example, IBM Watson developed AI revolution in oncology, ran for 10 years, spent billions of dollars on it, but failed to, the company sold off basically. So and they have to, and IBM is very well known for pioneering work. So another example is Google Health. If you may remember, Google Health used to be a very big company, but now division has been partly disbanded. The new Google company has come actually now, which is called Worley, VERILY, which is in existence. Apple's Health Hub app also scaled back, and so these are failures. They are used for last. I mean, the AI research is nothing new. It has been for many last years, but they failed miserably in spite of having huge resources and money actually. So the question comes, why did they fail? They fail because many reasons were there. There was they took the data, small data, and they're trying very beginning of their work, and they were using that data for their platform, which was not a national healthcare data. Healthcare data is known to be very dirty data. So they were not having good data quality. Domain expertise were missing in these companies. That means they consulted few times clinician, health economic modelers, but not regularly having people consult or having these type of people in their team, and so they failed miserably. So these are the reason. Healthcare is not like a tech. It's very different. It's not like a technology that it's a very different, and that's where they didn't realize that. So in healthcare, technology alone is not enough. Value demonstration and payer alignment are must. These two are very key aspect of it. Value demonstration. And payer, by the way, is someone that covers your insurance, like insurance companies are typically payers. Okay, there's this work. If you guys remember, in 1984 or 80s, in particularly, HIV was a big outbreak. So HIV was going out of hand. There were lots of cases and dying very quickly from HIV. And then came mid 90s, the new medicine came to the market, which was antiretroviral therapy, and it's called HAART, HAART, highly active antiretroviral therapy. And that was very expensive at that time, mid 90s. But it may, in spite of being expensive, people just jump onto it and were using it. And basically that heart medicines, antiretroviral, reduce the average life expectancy from 22 years to 51 years. Sorry, increased the life. So people in 1980s due to HIV were dying very early, but because of the antiretroviral therapy, when the analysis was done later on, they found that it has increased from 22 years to 51 years average life expectancy. So, and it could happen only because of the antiretroviral therapy. Magic Johnson was a very famous basketball player. Actually, he was diagnosed with HIV in 1991, but he's still surviving. And okay, I'm seeing some questions. Is there is any questions? No, let's see.
No, Dr. Anuj, you can continue. It's just
Okay,
greetings from people.
awesome. Okay. So the Magic Johnsons he was a very famous basketball player. He was on a peak during that time. In 1991, he was diagnosed with it. But mid 90s is when antiretroviral therapy came, and he started taking, and he's still alive. So it's a very good example where these medicines have done a tremendous value to the society. In fact, there was a research later on that in 2006 that was carried out that shows only 5% of the value of the antiretroviral therapy was captured by manufacturers. Most of the value went to the society, to the patients, the benefit of that. So the value of that medicine was primarily went to the society. But that at that time in 1990s, they were not aware of this thing. This was done very later in 2006 that we came to know about this thing. So this paper in bottom is our paper where we talk about this thing in South Africa. But so what is this telling us? Well, the telling it is that beside the profit, any medicine gives value to the society, right? And basically, this example motivated in today's world that we call it as HEOR field. If this type of things would have not happened, we would not had a field like HEOR. HEOR has evolved because of this type of things that has given value to the society, and now we are thinking about value-based pricing thinking. We are very motivated and we have very organized value-based pricing. Okay, so the question is, how do we decide what we are worth for? What should I pay? What is the worth of a particular medicine? What is the worth of a particular procedure? What is the worth of particular medical device? How do we decide that? So clinical benefit often is not sufficient. You need clinical benefit could be reduce side effects, or it could be recovery quicker. These are clinical benefit, but that does not guarantee that a patient will get an access to these medicines or these treatments. So often there are examples where they have lots of good clinical effectiveness, but they fail to come to the market. What is that so? Especially remember, we are all resource constrained. We are live in a resource constrained region. There are lots of region. So there is an economic trade-off also. Well, balancing cost of it and a clinical benefit. So you have to weigh them together. Also, when we talk about worth, we talk about worth with respect to someone. For example, an old car could be worth for millions of dollars for someone who is interested in classic cars. But someone who is very poor, the old car doesn't do his work, and may not worth that equally as someone who's rich and collects old classic cars. So stakeholder perspective is must, with which when we talk about worth of drug with respect to who, from from patient perspective, from payers perspective, from providers perspective, whose perspective we are talking about. And systems in the nature, in the real life, are constrained by other factors like budget, human resources. These are the things. So what clinical trial do is can answer a question like, can intervention work clinically under controlled environment? But what economic model is asking is it worth? From whom it is worth? Under what circumstances it is worth, the drug or the procedure or the health technology in general is worth? And what are the price? What is the right price to use for that? There, in the past, what we have seen, there are a few studies that have wonderfully taken out some statistics on this. Only 13% of the payers, insurance company typically use economic models. In 2016 study, ISPO did this survey. And they found only 13% of the payers are using economic model, really using it. Again, this is another 10 years old study, but typically they are less used practically. And even, 70% of them don't even refer it in some other their reports. They're all things. And this is the recent study. This is 2023 study which says, published in Value in Health, 70% of the economic models are never referred for anything. So, and then only 5% are making, this is recent work, 5% are making a policy, really very small, tiny impact, that making a policy impact. So the question comes, is it really worth building economic models, right? Well, the reason some of these things have people have these statistics are talking is some of the assumptions people make in economic models are buried in the appendix. They put it in the appendix. They don't show the assumption very clearly. And that's why there is low visibility of economic models and the result to use from that study. Gap, credibility, what data they are using, they are not very clear about it. The units of that data is not what sources they are using, multiple sources or single sources. That makes payers very cautious about whether they use it or not use it. Complexity over clarity, they have a lot of complex issues in that, but they don't really clear enough in this. So these are the reasons why models fail. Ritul, is the time very close to the time or no?
So, sir,
Um,
we can continue.
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
Anuj, maybe
Yeah.
10 minutes, 8-10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have more, but I will try to wrap up in 10 minutes.
I
So
mean,
there are,
I can understand. We are also enjoying it, Dr. Anuj. Please continue.
sure. Okay, so there are certain things why they are not being in the limelight. What we need to do is a correct mathematics answering a wrong question. The mathematics might be correct, but we are not putting it in a right way, information, and therefore we are missing the boat from health economic models. Okay, so what we can learn from the success of these tools? Well, it has to have a transparent structure. It has to be done along with the payers. You have to continuously have a communication. It's not one-time communication with the payers, but a clinician and payers are very important and it should take into account real-world data. And that is very key, not the synthetic data, but the real world data. That is very important. And later on, Dr. Fani is talking about on a real world evidence, which would be very interesting for you all also. So traditional economic models are a black box models, and they are fixed assumptions and one-time technical report. But newer models, today's models, it's a continuous evolving things. It's not one-time things. The dashboard keep on updating the information on a real-time basis. That is how we are making it, using multiple sources of informations in the models. So this is one study which evaluate the economic value of point of care testing, with a flu-like symptoms. It is done. Rapid molecular testing is done by this taking a blood drop, and it's a molecular testing on the spot. And it is done by this machine that you are seeing out in the screen. So during COVID, these tests came to the market. So the question was, is it worth bringing to the market? PCR is very well known. Polymerase chain reaction is very well known for testing flu-like symptoms. But at that time, it was taking PCR was taking almost 2 days, 3 days, maybe more, a week to get the result back. But remember, these are flu-like symptoms. If they are taking few more days to come back the results, these peoples are infecting other peoples quite a lot, right? So this method, this work, this study that we did evaluated this thing, taking into account those secondary infections that are causing more infections. And we found that rapid molecular test can be cost effective. In fact, cost saving if it is compared with PCR, which has very high accuracy rate. PCR is well known to have high, but rapid molecular takes 30 minutes, whereas PCR takes almost few days to results to come back. But that few days, what the patients are doing, waiting for the results, are very key aspects, because it is causing an extra cost to the society in those two waiting for the results to come back. So that was this study, and basically, we studied the traditional model said that cost effectiveness is not really. I mean, the rapid molecular test is not cost effective, whereas when we studied it, it became cost effective because we taking into account the secondary infection cost also, and that was very key to that. And faster diagnosis, rapid molecular tests are very good, but they have less accuracy as compared to PCR. So faster diagnosis time is very less, 30 minutes to few days. Transmission reduction, it reduces transmission a lot. It improves the healthcare overloading, basically. So since it is giving early results, so patients are not getting overcrowded in the hospital settings, and therefore hospital can be used for some other resources, and it has major societal value. Our work now is extending these models to incorporate productivity loss and real-time data from laboratory testings and pharmacy together. Another work that we worked on was on sickle cell disease, which is a kind of a rare disease where the kids are born with a sickle cell disease, and they get strokes, small strokes during their life, many of those ones. And what happened due to these strokes, their life activities keep becoming disrupted. For example, they cannot go to school if their strokes happen for a few days, and they may not able to get opportunities, equal opportunities as other normal people will get it. People who are not having those disease get it. So there are some drugs in the market which are improves the hemoglobin level, which is actually directly linked with strokes and the disease symptoms. And basically, the drugs reduces the risk of a stroke. And so we build very interesting models here where we linked their patients' symptoms to all the way to cognitive decline or cognitive increase, and also to the economic earnings. And we use from climate fields some model called as catastrophic models in this to understand that. So we compared a treated group treated with certain drugs for the improving their hemoglobin level. Hemoglobin level get decreased in these type of disease, and therefore it's very key aspect in it. Okay. There are newer therapies like gene therapy for sickle cell disease, and consistently these models have the economic models have been saying they are failing cost. That means they are they are saying gene therapy is not good for you. Not so the question comes, is it really the gene therapy is not good, or is it the model that we are using is having some drawbacks in it? So we use the models of connecting the value from a patient journey to long-term educational and cognitive improvements. But then there are new methods that are coming called as GRACE framework, which is a cost effectiveness methods, and that is basically taking into account severity of the disease and the benefit. So higher the severe, the more the benefit of the people are. And how do you incorporate that? Because if it is less severe disease, then you may not give a good value to the treatment. But most severe disease will have higher impact of the treatment. So gene therapy, which are expensive, but it still has a lot of value, and that's GRACE framework is talking about. Okay, so well, how do we decide on the models then? So designing the model depends on the disease characteristics. For example, rare diseases have a very limited data. And so it is decision tree type of models with the Bayesian analysis is used. Bayesian analysis capture the uncertainty in a better way than other models. So these type of models are very common for rare diseases. For chronic disease, it is Markov and simulation models because we are interested in long-term impact and the role of comorbidities. So Markov model and micro simulations are better choices for it. Infectious disease, there are transmission dynamics is very key, and so transmission dynamics and agent-based modeling are used for that. In oncology, partition survival models are very good because they partition the population based on how long they are surviving, and therefore in oncology this is the type of characteristic of a disease is captured better in partition survival. So you see, disease decides what model to consider, and so disease characteristics is very. So not only disease, it is evidence, what evidence you are having, what context, what stakeholders you are talking about, and what is the policy, whether it is an individual patient level policy decision that you are talking about, whether it is a population level policy decision. So these are all guides, is it describe help you design the models. So this is the timeline of how the development of the um, of the phase of the phases of the drugs development, pre-phase to phase 2 to phase 3 to phase 5, sorry 4, and the launch. So there is different type of models used in the different stages of the for example, in early phase 2 you use burden of illness models. In end of phase 2 you typically use early economic models. Phase 3 you use cost effectiveness models, and so on, so like budget impact, and there are different types of models. So over phases, span of the phases also describe what models to use. Health economics has a long history, very long history. So 1980s, decision tree was started, and the first work on health technology evaluation was begin. 1990s, NICE organization is NICE is a regulatory body in UK that is come into existence in 1990s. So Markov models at that stage started to use. In 2000, more advanced model like partition survival model, micro simulations, these started to become more popular. 2010 onwards, we started to focus on real world data integration into these models. How do you incorporate real world like claims, electronic medical records? 22 onwards, now 20 onwards, we are now talking about extended frameworks like distributional cost effectiveness, which takes into account financial aspects. There are lots of disease where finance of an patient becomes very challenging. So those aspects are very important for generating the value of the drug. So distributional cost effectiveness, GRACE frameworks takes into account severity of the disease, for example. So There is now we are thinking of agentic twins. Basically, it's a real-time information that are fed into the data and they are continuously updated rather than one-time static models. Okay, so there are different models that. So past was fixed pathways, present is more probabilistic in nature, but one time is still probabilistic in one time, and future looks like more adaptive in nature and not really static models. So the future of HEOR isn't more models, but models that matter to us. Okay, so we have to be very careful about transparency. It has to be transparent. Assumptions, inputs, data has to be very clear and standardized way it is presented. The model results have been validated in some way. This is very key. How do I one believes that your results are correct? That is only few study do that. Validation is done from using other data or internally also different data sets that they are used to validate it. And it has a continuous involvement of the stakeholder. It is not one time things by AI is there, but AI will not take over the human governance on the models, and that is very clear actually. So it is the technical excellence which is important, and creating the value which is the key for it. It's not about the methodology anymore, it is about the value, and that is the skill set that you have to generate or build over a period of time. With the last thing that we have a modeling workshop hands-on coming in December in Uttarakhand, and it is by Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health as well, and ICMR also. So you can register for it. It will be in person, and there will be lots of modeling work that we will be talking about in that. So, okay, so I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your listening to me, and I hope it is fruitful and helpful to you.
Thanks, Dr. Anuj, for the wonderful and amazing session. And I just wish we had more time, because I mean you are like a treasure trove for knowledge and experience. But we'll get you back. No problem in that.
Sure.
So everyone, please feel free to ask your questions from Dr. Anuj.
Yeah, and in you, as I said, I mean, maybe if you want to, I actually do a lot of work, a lot of things I show on LinkedIn. So connect with me on a LinkedIn. It is helpful to you, and you will see the different things I post about what is a growing trend, current trends on in health economics outcome research, especially from a modeling perspective, but also how we think about models. Models is not about like a hammer and you use it everywhere. It's about thinking also, and that's where AI cannot take that things, at least for next 5 years, until unless AGI or ASI comes into picture. AGI stands for general intelligence and ASI stands for super intelligence. They are far away. I mean, they would take many years to come. And I think the AIs are not yet there to take over any human modelers, and they need it for sure in these type of skills. Okay, so I'll stop. And if there is any question, happy to take
There's a
it.
question in the chat box. Would I read it for you?
Yes, please, Ritul. And in the interest of time, let's take one
Yeah,
question as other speakers are waiting and they have joined.
sure.
So the question is from Bala. Sir, can you explain a little bit more GRACE framework?
Yeah, so the GRACE framework is it's actually you have to think from the economic perspective. Typically, you give same utility to the patient. So you talk about whether a person is sick or not sick, and you give a same weightage, economic weightage to the patient who is sick. All are same, but grace models changes things from an economic perspective. It says the same drug for a mild case would have less economic benefit, and a severe case may have a much higher economic benefit. And so that's the feature it takes into account, which is genuinely true. Some of the drugs which are very expensive, like rare disease, could be millions of dollars. Some mild cases will not give weightage to that drug, will not value that drug too much. But someone who is very extreme case will value more these drugs. But how do you incorporate that things? That is done through the GRACE models, basically. So it is very well known model in the literature. Thank
And
you,
Dr.
Fani.
Fani has posted a link
Yes.
to help everyone. Thanks, Dr. Fani.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
this, let's move on, Ritul. I know there are more questions, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mumbai. We
Is
extend our
one
call.
more thing, Ritul, just one
Yes,
last sentence.
yes.
Dr. Fani and I work also quite a lot. We have a lot of papers together, and this would be really interesting to hear what he has to say about real world. He's an expert in real world evidence. So, Ritul, go ahead, please.
It's a planned thing, Dr. Anuj.
Yeah.
Having Dr. Fani just after you. So, yeah.
Oh, I
Yes.
see. Okay.
Yes, Ritul.
We extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Anuj Mumbai for his illuminating session on economics modeling in HEOR, a brilliant convergence of numbers, narratives, and impact that set an inspiring tone for the day. Our next section is titled Evidence That Matters Uses Cases in Real World Data for Health Solutions. This talk will highlight how real world data is revolutionizing healthcare decision making, turning evidence into meaningful patient centered solutions. We are privileged to welcome Dr. Fani Vedant, Senior Director and Principal Consultant at Optum. Dr. Viranki brings over a decade of experience in health economics and outcome research, medicine, and real-world evidence generation. He has held leadership positions at Christian Medicine Group, Premier, and has served an adjunct faculty at the University of Texas Medical Branch. His work bridges academia and industry, advancing evidence-based research that improves health outcomes and policy decision making. Joining him is Mr. Abhimanyu Roy, Associate Director at Optum, with extensive experience in health economics, market access, and real-world data analysis. Before Optum, he worked with leading organizations including EY, ValueServe, and GSK, where he contributed to strategic projects in HEOR and pharmaceutical market insights. Mr. Roy is known for his data-driven approach to translating complex research into actionable healthcare strategy. Before we begin, I would like to inform everyone we'll have a short Q&A session after the talk, so please keep your questions ready as we move along. Together, Dr. Viranki and Mr. Roy will share valuable insights on how real-world data is shaping the future of healthcare solutions. Please join me in warmly welcoming them both. Over to you, sir.
Please unmute both Fani and Abhimanyu and make them the co-hosts. I think Dr. Ajit, you are the host.
Okay. You guys hear me?
Yes, Dr. Fani, and thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
today.
no worries at all. So it's 11 p.m. on the Houston.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So that's what like Anuj is like 1 hour behind me. So first thing, like, thank you, Dr. Goel, for inviting Dr. Roy and me for sharing some of our insights into your conference. So it's a vast variety of topics that you have just listed out, but we chose a simple one. So based on the audience as well as folks, but at the same time, feel free to drop some questions or along the way, so you don't have to wait until the end, because it'll be primarily Abhi will be pretty much be presenting and I'll be supporting him. So, but at the same time, I'll be monitoring the chat as well. So, by way of introduction, so as Ritu stated a while ago, so currently I serve as an Senior Director, Principal Scientific Consultant at Optum Life Sciences. So I am also an advisor for Kalam Experts Private Limited, also an advisor for Numeric IQ, also an advisor for ENA Scientific Solutions, like almost like 3 or 4 startup groups that where I support pretty much like the clinical advisory model into developing or generating the real world evidence insight for every drug or a product throughout the life cycle, all the way from phase 0, phase 1, all the way to post-approval clinical trials and safety and effectiveness studies. So pretty much all my life I've been a clinician, had my own shop in academia, and at the same time supporting industry into this product value. So more from a clinical perspective, while Dr. Mobai brings in more from an economic perspective. So economics is always there, but being a clinician, I usually believe in treating patients and everything. So I bring in the clinical value. So I will let Abhi introduce, and Abhi will take over, but I'll come back into speaking about the future state of some of the things. So that, but I think Optum Life Sciences has an India division that is led by Abhi. So he pretty much has his own team, so that pretty much runs most of the studies that we do in the US. Pretty much his team also oversees a lot of studies. So pretty much unlike most of the evidence synthesis work, we do evidence generation within our team in India. So that's kind of a USP back of Optum Life Sciences India team. So I will hand it over to Abhi. So, and from there again, drop questions, use the next 45 to 1 minutes. If I had given like additional 15 minutes, like additional 1 hour to ask some questions, I'll be monitoring the chat. I will just respond as much as possible.
Thanks, Dr. Fani. Thanks, Dr. Richa and Dr. Ajit for having me here. Just will start with a quick introduction of mine. So I'm Abhi, based out of Gurgaon. So I'm leading the HEOR team here at Optum from India side, as Fani pointed. So I have an interesting career, started with sales and marketing with GlaxoSmithKline, and then move on to strategic consulting at EY, and now working at Optum for almost close to 4 years now. One of the biggest achievement I would like to highlight for the team here in India is that in last 4 years, uh, the team has presented over 100 posters at various international conferences like ISPOR, AMCP, PMSA. And if I talk about awards, so the team also won award for various conferences like Platinum Award, top 5 posters presentations at ISPO. Yeah, so these are some of the brief highlights of my team. Starting to share my screen. Please let me know once it's visible.
Yes, it is. Please make it full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so we'll be talking about the use cases in real world data for healthcare industry. If I talk about what is real world data, so real world data, it refers to the health information that is collected uh, in the actual real world setting. Either it can be the real life of the patient or the clinical settings in various physician offices. That's totally separated from what the information is collected from clinical trials. And there are multiple sources of this information real world, and these are quite complex in nature. And if I talk about the main sources, so first one is the electronic health record. So these are the electronic records of the patient healthcare information. So these include information on diagnosis, treatment patterns, lab results, and physician notes. Another important source of information is the claim. So administrative claim data submitted by various healthcare providers to the insurance companies, these also provide an important source of information. Uh, so the information they include are healthcare resource utilization, costs, different procedures performed, and various medical prescriptions that are given. Then another source is patient registries. These are the organized systems that collect uniform data on specific disease, conditions, exposures. Some of the important registries can be around the cancer. Another can be around various procedures like joint procedures. Then the upcoming sources of real world data, as we are in the phase of internet AI technology. So other sources of real world data are also coming up, like the wearable devices, the Fitbits, the smart watches that we wear. They provide continuous data to us. And then there's another important source is the patient reported outcomes. So patient reported outcomes are some of the healthcare information that are reported by patients. So these are an important source of information to complete the thread of real world data. Some of the examples for patient reported outcomes are like the pain scores, the mental health condition. These are important patient reported outcomes. So the real world data, it goes hand in hand with the clinical trials. Okay, so it complement clinical trials uh, because in clinical trials, what we have is defined structured outcomes that we captured, and a selective population is there. Whereas in real world data, we have sources of information that complement the clinical trials. Uh, as we understood real world data, so the evidence generated from the real world data, it constitutes the real world evidence, right? And uh, a few of the important things that real world evidence can be used are the regulatory decision making. So here regulatory bodies such as FDA, US FDA, EMA, these are using more and more of real world data for approving the drugs. Then, with respect to the market access, if we talk about, so there are payers that are asking for real world evidence so that they can reimburse the drug and give suitable market access for the drugs as well as some of the medical devices. Uh, Another important aspect is real world data and evidence. They can be used to tailor the medicine as well as the treatment for the patients. So that comes under the personal medicine. Moving on, some of the important key use cases. So, for example, if we talk about drug safety, there's a classic case of phocomelia that was caused by thalidomide. So real world evidence, they can help in identifying the treatment patterns and also what are the adverse outcome events that are associated with the drugs. Another example here is like uh, uh, COVID was there in 2019, 2020, and there was a rapid marketing, or you can say enhanced clinical trial was done, and that led to shortening of the clinical trial. So over a longer period of time, uh, these real world studies can help and support the generation of evidence for safety as well as efficacy of these vaccines. Another important use case is around the health technology assessment. So, various countries, specifically the European countries, they are using these real world data to support the health technology assessment, the cost effectiveness, and value based care. in our previous presentation, we had a focus on this value-based care and economic modeling. So that part comes from that. Then predictive analytics, an important part that's coming up with respect to the real world data and the use of AI, agentic AI in this. Few of the examples are like if patient is having a chronic kidney disease and they are moving from stage 1 to stage 3, stage 2, stage 3, and so on. So we can use this real world data and AI, ML part and agentic AI part to predict whether these patients will transition to stage 2, stage 3, and so on. What will be the time duration? How we can prevent those moving to stage 2, stage 3. So these kind of things can be done by using predictive analytics. Then another important use case is like tracking the patient outcomes, and by improving the patient outcomes by how we can do that. So real world data, it can help to identify patient subgroups which will benefit the best from a particular drug, and it can reduce overall healthcare burden. Example here is, for example, if we are looking at CRC, colorectal cancer, and here we can see a particular type of drug if it's effective in a particular drug, particular patient population which have a suitable biomarker. So these are some of the use cases. Further, next I'll hand it over to Fani to talk about another elaborative case study.
So before I talk about the case study, so think of it. Where does all these things? So I know this is kind of like advanced sometimes, but this is something that we do from a professional perspective that might not be taught in any classrooms or anything. So on the India side, for example, US FDA is the regulatory body for approving any healthcare technologies, which include drugs and any biomedical device or anything in US. And it's on the European side, it's European Medical Agency, it's a EMA. On the India side, it's CDSCO. So think about these bodies require evidence from different perspectives. One is an economic value, the other one is a clinical value. So economic value, you typically get it from different types of models. So whether what is my burden of the disease, and if I have an intervention or a drug in the market, how much will my burden be reduced? So what is the cost offset associated with approving this medication? So it's like a budget impact model followed by cost offset model and everything. And the biggest one is a cost effectiveness modeling that we keep hearing a lot. So that is typically used for health technology assessment and everything. That is pretty much a core, because everyone at the end of the day, so it's, even though there's a clinical benefit, is at a larger economic value that you have to approve the drug compared to the existing comparator in the market. So to provide that evidence to make the decision for a regulator, which is either CDSCO or FDA or EMA, they need evidence. So the evidence comes from models, but at the same time, there is evidence beyond economic value, which is a clinical value. So the clinical value evidence is coming from the clinical trial, but at the same time, clinical trial is a controlled way of conducting a study to develop the efficacy of a drug. But what's happening in the real world is also something that's important. And the other value that the real world evidence brings is what are the inputs to some of these models? So many times model inputs are really critical. As Dr. Mubai mentioned, the understanding the importance of a model and the transparency of a model and providing and gathering the appropriate inputs to provide or gather the output of a model is critical. So if you don't have a good input into the model, then pretty much your output might be skewed enough as well. So the model inputs usually come from two major sources. One is evidence synthesis, which you might have heard is systematic literature reviews that are different types of literature reviews and meta-analysis and everything. Other way is real world data analysis, which is called real world evidence. So think it from some who needs this type of work, and how do you get there, and what are the things? So there are primarily three types of decision makers who make this Of course, beyond public health policy and everything, I'm just only talking about the pharmaceutical type of industry. One is regulator, who approves the drugs in the market. The other one is a payer, which is somebody like an HTA bodies. Sorry, the second one is the HTA bodies. We don't have any HTA body on the US side, but there are HTA bodies across the world. Even HTI International, which serves as HTA body for India as well, they need also the evidence. And the other one is a payer, so which means the insurance company. So insurance company needs a certain value of metrics to make a decision what reimbursement that will provide to the hospital systems or the providers. So there are three primary stakeholders who need some evidence to provide that value for a drug to a patient or a provider or a payer as well. So for this, you need to think about like backwards. How do you demonstrate that value, whether that value is from economic value and the clinical value, and these both pretty much complement each other. So many times you have this long clinical trials that run across like several years, like average clinical trials run across like 8 to 12 years. So right now they're cut shorting it with some sophisticated clinical trial designs, like basket trials and everything. But at the same time, they also need the evidence from real world practice, which comes from real world evidence. So where does this real world evidence come from? It's from real world data. So how is the real world data collected? Pretty much if you go to an hospital, uh, doctor comes over, ask some questions, get some labs done. Those are all electronic medical record. And once it is submitted to a payer for reimbursement, it becomes a claim, because if the claim is processed, then it becomes a claim. So it's not necessary that every medical record or every charge that the hospital charges you is being reimbursed by an insurance company. So there's a contract between an insurance company and a provider that negotiates a reimbursement policy as well. So when the claim is processed, it becomes a claims data, which is actually structured data, because EMR can be very much pretty much like defined by individual provider or hospital system, but the claims data is pretty much structured in a way that because the insurance company has a contract with multiple hospital systems, so they have a structure as well. So that's the reason one of the cleanest data right now available is always the claims data. And the other one is like if you look at your case sheets, the provider keeps scribbling off as you just provide some details about your history, patient history and everything. He just keeps scribbling out. That is called unstructured clinical data. So that is also adds a lot of value to provide the past history and everything. So there are different types of data elements that Abhi mentioned, but from a larger context, where does this real world evidence, where does real world data fit in the entire clinical and economic value of a drug and molecule? So that being said, so again, this is kind of advanced what we do on a professional level on the US side, and Abhi's team helps us on the India side as well. So I will provide you one detailed case study here because I want to be cognizant of the time and wanted to give you enough time to ask us questions as well. So Abhi, if you can just switch to the next slide. So this is a real case study. So I'm allowed to present this one because we already published this paper. So there was a drug called bresconetab. So that was a complement inhibitor drug that was being approved, I believe, like a few months ago by a company called Insmed. So they came to us probably like 2.5 years ago. They wanted to try to understand the real world patterns of non-cystic fibrosis bronchiectasis patients. So bronchiectasis patients are one of the severely lung disease patients, which is characterized by irreversible abnormal dilatation of the what you call like bronchi. So which means you're pretty much there's no reversibility. So all the bronchial structure is destroyed and it's irreversible. The patient continues to present like an continuous cough, sputum, and breathlessness, and always superseded with acute infections, with pneumonia. Even some of the patients also presented with tuberculosis as well. So which means like the patient is a severe lung disease patient where there is a less chance for even survival as well. So the main goal for managing these patients is to alleviate some of the symptoms, reduce the complications downstream, and ultimately improving the healthcare quality of life and also some of the survival. So that's a goal of the management, and also the drug that is being approved is also trying to reduce the lung function decline. So since their primary outcome for the drug's clinical trial outcome is lung function decline, so uh, uh, the pharma partner reached out to us to understand what is the lung function decline among non-cystic bronchiectasis patients in the real world practice. So we used a database called Optum Market Clarity Claims and Clinical Database, so which is an integrated claims and clinical database. So which means which means patients had an EHR record as well as a claim. So which means at the same time we will be identifying the patient through a claim and also follow this patient longitudinally through labs in the EHR system. So claims doesn't have labs. So only the cost associated with a lab report or a lab order is being reimbursed by insurance companies is a claim on the administrative claims data. So it doesn't have any labs. So that's the reason we had to link it with the clinical database. So it's called an integrated claims and database, so which is actually a product for Optum Life Sciences. So as I did mention, some of the goal is to understand the lung function decline, what is the treatment patterns of these patients. And these patients, if you think about a clinical trial, you can allow a patient to be having at least one exacerbation or two exacerbation in the window period, and then randomize into placebo in the treatment trial, and then give the treatment to the treatment arm and have the stand of care to the placebo arm. So that's how it's a controlled clinical trial. But in the real world practice, so one patient, think about like patient A presents at the same point like January 2024 with one baseline exacerbation, while patient B presents with two exacerbations, while patient C doesn't even have an exacerbation, but might be an at-risk patient for being exacerbation for bronchiectasis. So there'll be different patterns of different flavors of patients, or let me put it in like a phenotypes of patients at the same time point in real world clinical practice. So that's the beauty of real world data and real world evidence. It's messy. So that's the reason we have so many designs of studies, so that you learn in pretty much like epidemiological study, AP 101 or 201. So you learn about like case control study to all the way to prospective studies, case control designs, nested case control, and everything. So those are standard designs that will bring all these types of messiness of the data of a patient data in real world practice into an appropriate study design. So the study design that we designed is a retrospective cohort study of non-cystic fibrosis bronchiectasis patients to understand the relation between the baseline exacerbation and lung function decline, as well as the associated signs and symptoms, as well as treatment patterns over time. So we also have, since it is we had the claims as well, we also reported the healthcare burden story associated with the baseline exacerbation among these patients. So on the result side, it's almost like an 11 to 12 month study for us, because for several process in conducting a study. So we have to go through the protocol approval process, bring the data in, structure the data, as well as get a data dictionary and pretty much program it and analyze the data, and also understand the interpretations of the results as well as. So the study revealed that the patient with more frequent baseline exacerbation were associated with worse lung function over time. That is pretty much that you expect. And the patient, the more the exacerbation, the baseline was associated with the worst cough, hemoptysis, dyspnea, which is like breathlessness. Even some of the patients presented with even mucus discharge as well. So, and on the other hand, it was vice versa also. So think about like if the patient didn't have an exacerbation, but the lung function has been declining, they had presented with the follow-up exacerbation as well. So it's like a combination of, you see that exacerbation led to lung function decline followed by worsening of symptoms and more treatment patterns and increased use of antibiotics, even the steroids as well, and even some of the characteristics of microbes, as I did mention. So these patients have an underlying secondary respiratory pneumonia as well as tuberculosis as well. So an increased respiratory failure as well as healthcare utilization cost as well. So which means pretty much we have provided the evidence from a real world clinical practice that these patients have a higher burden story, and the burden is associated with higher bronchiectasis related exacerbations, related healthcare utilizations, what are the patterns, associated treatment costs, associated respiratory failure over time. So these are the things that as Dr. Mobai was mentioning earlier, you have to take into account of these all factors when designing and model. So that's the reason some of these sophisticated models have come into account, that which takes into characteristics of the underlying disease severity and also some of the conditions of the change of patients over time. So that's the reason GRACE framework, GRACE model framework, as well as some of the Markov chain models take into account of this longer term framework of these chronic conditions. So this is published. So we left an reference over there if you would love to get into some of the details about this study as well as, and the study design has been presented in the details. But it's a complex study because think about clinical symptoms and signs and symptoms data on the clinical side. So patient will present with multiple times of cough over a time period. So how do you factor in? So patient will present with dyspnea. So patients will say like, I have like 10 minutes of dyspnea in the morning, like 40 minutes of dyspnea in the evening. And other patient says like, I don't have any dyspnea, I'm not breathless and everything. So you have to pretty much streamline the data, define some of these variables when bring them all together into standardization variables and just conduct this study. So it's a great study. So feel free to just spend some time into reading it, and feel free to reach out to us for any other questions. So I will pass it back to Abhi to present some of the challenges as well as some of the future directions for real world data and real world evidence, and we can just take questions after that.
Thanks, Vani. Now moving on to various challenges and opportunity in the real world data or real world evidence. So the first and most important challenges is about the data standardization and data quality. As we see, the data is coming from diverse sources of information, whether it be EHR, your smartwatches, patient reported outcomes. So there's no standard pattern for filling the information or getting the information. So that's a main challenge. And with respect to the EHR, many companies in the US they are working on this to standardize the information gathering and so that a meaningful outcome can be taken from that. Another important consideration is the privacy and ethical concerns. There are HIPAA regulations, GDPR, and other various legislations or laws that are there. However, we should also be mindful that no individual patient level information should be out. It should be a broader inference or the outcomes that we take out. Another thing to consider is the technology advancement. So AI, ML, these are being used quite a lot. Specifically, if we see, Dr. Fani talked about the physician notes in the EHR data. So that's a gold mine, and taking out information from an unstructured data is an important thing. I think it is and it will be one of the biggest thing in the industry. So that's another thing. So we need more of global collaboration, various stakeholders, not in terms of the private companies, but in terms of different governments also across borders. They should come together to develop some of the standards so that information can be collected in a standard way and can be used in a standard output. Next, if we talk about some of the future directions in the real world data, so expanding different data sources, as we already talked about, wearable mobile applications, and also social media monitoring about real-time patient health. So all this provide a comprehensive insight. So these will keep on growing. Continuous devices are being used, whether it's continuous glucose monitoring devices are there, Then there are devices to continuously measure the blood pressure. So all these sources will be expanding, and there's a need to integrate this. Then data interoperability. So most of the companies, they have their own way of taking out data. So again, a standardization is required in them. Then patient reported outcomes. So these should be at the center of a study. Whatever patient is reporting their outcome should be considered, and a central way to do that, and their voice should be taken into account for decision making. uh, again the AI ML part, so it's going at quite a rapid pace. Uh, so uh, it started with normal AI ML part, the NLP part. Now agentic AI is coming, and companies are developing various AI ML models to take out data from the unstructured note or physician notes. Yeah. So these are some of the future directions that we are looking. So times are exciting for the real world data usage and real world data evidence. Thanks. Funny, would you like to add here?
No, as again, so as Abhimanyu mentioned, so we wanted to give you a flavor of what are the things that we do and what we support. So we do a wide variety of evidence synthesis, evidence strategy, synthesis, generation, pretty much, and policy analysis as well across our team. So we wanted to give you a flavor of a use case. So how do you bring in all your things that you learn in your classroom into a professional experience? So but again, so at the same time, we wanted to leave you off with where we are heading, which direction are we heading with several things. I know like AI is pretty much like a buzzword. People just keep talking, but I think AI has been there within us for quite a bit. So in terms of like machine learning models and everything. So but we have been using them for a while. But at the same time, we also develop new techniques with agents and everything and generate AI and everything. But that being said, so we would wanted to leave you off with a flavor of what is real world data, what types of real world data, what is the evidence, how is it different from the evidence that we generate from the clinical trial, and what are the current challenges that we are facing with generating this evidence, and where is this evidence required. So basically with the regulator, payer, as well as the provider, and they call it as 4Ps as well. So you can just easily remember it. So, and what is the future directions of real world evidence and real world data? So again, we are at the top of the hour, but again, we will happy to stay back and just answer a few questions. So feel free to unmute yourself and just ask questions, or just drop your question in the chat. We'll be happy to just respond to it.
Thanks, Dr. Fani and Abhimanyu, for the wonderful session. Guys, please feel free to drop in and ask your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhimanyu and Dr. Fani, for this wonderful lecture. And it's really, very good to see you on the Monday morning. And I can see the audience also, guys. If you're joining us on Monday morning from your offices, from your colleges, please ask your questions. I'm very sure you're learning something really good. Questions, guys?
Seems like everyone is expert here. So
No, we see questions coming. Dr. Fani, 2 of them are
okay,
there.
so
Would I read it for you?
no, I can read it. Thanks, Ritul. So that's a great question. So again, the wearables data and the social media data are the new things. So it's when I say new things, so the data curation of the data individually is pretty much easy. I'd put it that way, because if you think about your Apple Watch or a Fitbit that you wear for everyday practice, so it's continuous data that over time. So when you're pretty much analyzing it, there are some standard models to analyze it. And similarly, the social media data from Facebook, it's free text analysis. So that has been there forever. But when you're trying to integrate those all things together, either into a larger data to generate the evidence or the model, then it has to be standardized. And that standardization has to go through several protocols and several approval process. And even there is no even guidelines. How do we do it at this point? So that's the complexity of when you're just trying to bring or link multiple data asset. Each data asset itself, it's an individual data asset with its own structure and everything. But when you're bringing them together, so that the structure is different. So again, we use variable data, social media data in multiple ways. For example, the studies that we do with variable data, we try to bring and incorporate within our Optum data assets using a universal patient ID. So we link these patients back to the universal ID. And think about the variable data has a timestamp as a date stamp. So we link that data with the standardization with our timestamp and the date stamp with our outcomes data to conduct the studies. And similarly with the social media data, we use NLP models to analyze that social media or the free text data to convert them to standardized variables. So right now, so there is no current guidelines. How do we do it? But our team has a different way of doing it with employing different models and different analysis and everything. The second question, how can real-world data be leveraged not just for post-launch monitoring, but for early access and pricing decisions? So yes, that's a great question. So many times we always think about launching a product is usually within the last 3 to 4 months when you are having a clinical trial readout and you plan, but it's not that way. So pretty much understanding the market and understanding where is your market, where is your patients, who are the providers prescribing those medications will help you with early access and pricing decisions. And pricing decision usually takes quite a bit. So even during cost effectiveness analysis, even when it's almost like phase 3, when your phase 3 clinical trial has started, so which usually takes around like 2 to 3 years or sometimes even 4 years, depending on how soon that you can enroll your patients, you have to start understanding the access to your drug. Where are your competitors? What is the potential market uptake? And based on that, there'll be a pricing decision. So again, there's something called pricing analytics, or most of them. Many times it's always a comparative price that you need to understand, and how do you price it, and why do you price it higher than your competitor? And there are bodies that actually provide an independent evaluation of the pricing as well. So on the US side, it's called ICER reviews. So Institute for Clinical and Economic Review, that is led by Peter Newman group of Tufts University. So they do some of these cost effectiveness modeling at a larger complex level and just provide some average pricing that you can. And many times the pricing decision that you do, that the pharma company do, as well as the independent body does, it pretty much align as well. So it's not post-launch. So when you think about the strategy of a product launch as well as access, it will be starting almost at phase 2A and phase 3 clinical trials. So it's almost like 3 to 4 years in advance that all these activities will be launched for understanding the immediate market uptake as well as pricing decisions as well. Because once the drug is approved, if you remember, COVID vaccines were approved, and the next day the patients were receiving the drug. So which means the pharma partners have already pretty much took several steps. If the drug has been approved, which means the drug has been already been manufactured and ready to be distributed with a specific access and a price as well. So which means they start almost like several years in advance. So in my experience, what are the next big opportunities for real world data and personalized medicine and AI driven predictive care? So you pretty much wrote it. So it's personalized medicine. So that's where we are planning to present the evidence, which is very complex. So think about a cancer patient. when chemotherapy agents and followed by immunotherapy agents that were pretty much predominant. Even now, Keytruda, which is a Merck's drug, is one of the predominant blockbuster drug and one of the highest revenue generating drug, which is just overtaken by Eli Lilly's drugs, so obesity drugs. But still chemotherapy and immunotherapy were the common ones. But again, the evidence has generated in such a way that a specific genotypic variant of a drug molecule has been coming into the market. So some of the newer drugs like HER plus positive, EGFR positive drugs for oncology or breast tumor. So which means like the medicine, the practice of medicine keep changing as the drugs keep evolving, or vice versa. So as you think about if you're practicing medicine in such a way that, okay, now you're a breast cancer patient, you take a biopsy, send it for a result for a specific genome marker, then you look for, do you have a medicine? If there's no medicine, do you plan to get that medicine, innovate that medicine? So yes, real world evidence is primarily moving into pretty much like a personalized medicine as well as predictive care. So predictive care is also something that as Abhi mentioned is one of the slides. So right now, think about from predictive analytics, it's so strong right now with so much volume of data and AI models and that we have developing right now. So the idea is to predict a disease as well as disease progression much early in the timeline. So which means if you're thinking that, for example, Alzheimer's of a patient kicks around like 65, 70 years, can you predict it? Can you predict it like 5 to 6 years in advance so that you can intervene? So with the volume of the data that we are gathering right now, it's very much possible. So pretty much your question has its answer. So that's where we are moving in that direction. So and we are collecting the data. So the real world data is at personalized medicine is already being available. So on the oncology side, you have specific oncology registries, as well as that collect that specific biomarker as well as genotypic signaling data. So there is also a body. There's I think not on the US side or not on the developing country side, but the European continents also have a genomic biobank. It's called, I think you guys have heard about UK Biobank, so which actually collects the biomarker or the to understand pretty much the personalized medicine. So the goal is to actually collect. It's very expensive because you cannot genome sequence every patient that you see. Is really expensive, and keep the data right there so that you can use the patient data later on for some of these things. But if you think about the other side of the story, now there has been strong proponent to collecting the stem cells transplant from, or you call it as cord cells or something, when a baby was born. So that is one of the beauty of this personalized medicine, that you can use some of these cells that you have preserved for almost like 30, 40 years when you are born, to actually treat your conditions later on. So the data is being collected at that level, and we are using the data to provide evidence moving forward. So how do hospitals contribute to generating real world evidence, and what systems and collaborations are important to ensure the data collected? So again, so from the US side, so we call it as EMR networks, EMR systems. You call it as Epic Cerner system. So which has a standardized way of structuring the data. But on the India side, the data is fragmented. So which means like every hospital system can use their own data collection framework, so or EHR frameworks to collect the data. But again, the baseline structure will always be decided by when you compile the data. So you need to also think about, if you're compiling the data, then you have to create a system in such a way that it is being structured across multiple systems across a region and everything. So again, some of those guidelines are being published by a faculty. I forgot his name, but they published through ICMR as well. How do you structure and streamline some of this data that's not available? So can we use retrospective data also for real world data, or only prospective data? Keep in mind validation of the data. Okay, so data is data. So when you are using the data that has already been collected and using it to generate the evidence, it's called retrospective. But at the same time, if you're recruiting a cohort of patients in real world practice, let's say you are a research assistant or a faculty somewhere and recruiting, like let's say like asthma patients in a hospital network, and wanted to collect the data from those patients periodically. It's called prospective data. So, and the validation of the data is critical. So especially the validation of some of the retrospective data is because prospectively you're collecting the data. It's easy to validate because you're collecting the data and validating it with discussing with the provider is pretty much a validation. But on the retrospective side, think about if you have 20 years of the data, how do you validate somebody's data point that was like 15 years ago? How do you validate it? So there are several metrics out there. So the gold standard validation of a data is always an EHR, so which means the medical chart. So what we do is so we try to identify the patient, we try to go to the provider and appropriately identify the exact medical chart of the patient and validate it. So that's a gold standard one. There are other ways to validate it. Some of the other data sources are quickly some of the consensus building with some of the providers. Sometimes you take an average data point for one of the variable and try to get some concern statement, try to understand the patterns as well. So there are different validations as well. So in our group, the gold standard is always a medical chart. The other one is we always also validate with the clinical notes because it's also something the provider has written. And the other one is reaching out to the provider. But again, think about recall bias. So that's where it's a huge entity when you're trying to validate some of the retrospective data. So the other question, how can interdisciplinary collaboration between clinicians, data scientists enhance the quality and therefore improvement? So again, most of these large data assets, including Optum data asset, which is one of the largest commercially available data asset in the world. So it's a collaboration. So it's a collaboration between the insurance company as well as a provider network. And once we receive the data into the system, then it's always being managed by different types of programmers, IT engineers, even before the data is given to data scientists and economists to understand the value of the data. So it's always a collaboration. Again, so on the India side, you have to start small. So you have to start with a small hospital system. And it's not necessary. Sometimes putting an infrastructure, having a large, think about like if somebody is funding you, then it's important that you have all your technical expertise stakeholders and then try to collect the data so that the data is governed. So hopefully next time we'll show you how the data flows across different systems to make it a research data asset, because the original data that is actually being collected at the patient level is always a raw messy data, and there'll be multiple streams. How you curate the data, how do you standardize it, and how do you make it operatable across different stakeholders? There are several steps across quality, transparency, and standardization, operability before you can make it research ready. And during all these major steps, there is a collaboration between the clinicians, data scientists, economists, IT professionals, and even coders, programmers, medical writers, and even the providers who actually validate as well. So next time, if we are invited again, Abhi and I will show you one of the data flow, how you bring that raw, messy data, and how do you convert it to the research-ready, operable data. So is there risk that over reliance? I know there are like several questions, 3 more questions. Richa, I'll go through it.
Sure,
How
Dr.
can we
Sani.
manage? How can we manage HIPAA compliance while using the data? So HIPAA compliance data is always a data that has a PHI, which is called protected health information. So that's, as I did mention at the start of the data, so it's a really messy data that has a PHI. So over the process of data curation, we'll have to de-identify it. So which means the data has to be stripped of the protected health information that will lead to identifying the patient. So that's the reason. So the HIPAA compliant data will be converted to a de-identified HIPAA compliant data before it's made research ready. So that's the reason the original medical record ID will be converted to a dummy patient ID for analysis. So that's how we manage it in the data flow. is there a risk that over-reliance on real-world evidence could lead to decisions driven by data quantity rather than data quality? So again, that's a great question. So again, it all depends on where you are in your world. So that's the reason models, as Dr. Mobai mentioned, models are really critical, but the inputs of the model will always be governed by a good evidence of data. So think about from a context of if you're doing if you're conducting a study on rare disease, for example, like Gawker's disease or any glucogen storage disorder or even neurofibromatosis or something. So in that case, you have less patients, you have less data, but data quality is critical for those sample size, because you hardly can get even like 100 patients if you're trying to capture some information. But on the other side, if you are conducting a study on diabetes patients, you have volumes of data. Sometimes you don't, within that volumes of like 10 lakhs of patients, even if you have a good quality of data for 20,000 patients, you can do a good study. You can strip out the data. The only thing is external validity of your studies is a big question, that you can weigh the data and get some external validity. So again, it all depends on the context, how you think about data quantity versus quality. So again, so in a good research study design, you need to have good data quality along with a good sample size to power your study. But unfortunately, there will be instances where you have to make some decisions regarding data quantity versus quality. Last but not the least, as healthcare data sources keep expanding, how do we maintain balance between patient privacy and the need for large-scale data sharing for research? So there are several data sharing platforms that actually allow you to do it. So for example, I think RedCap is one of the most common ones still used. So we use different sources internally. We use Sequester and everything, but RedCap is one of the one that has been developed by Vanderbilt. So where most of the CRO industry still use it. So every CRO industry has again a different what you call case report forms and everything. But on an external perspective, you try to set it up everything in RedCap, because on the RedCap you can put in the last name, first name of patient date of birth, and everything, as I did mention, the protected healthcare information. But when you're exporting or the data file, it becomes de-identified PHI. So which means you will be having a linkable data file to your patient identifier, but your research data asset is always something ready, so where you can protect the patient privacy and you can scale it as well. So think about, you have like 4 organizations and people are entering, research assistants are entering the data into one system which has a private information, but the output of the data is pretty much stripping of the PHI. So there are frameworks over there that are pretty much you can pick and use, and RedCap is one great example. The last one, okay, so we are doing a small research study. Then how do you recently, you said many people are involved in decision making in academics. So probably I did not get your question completely. So I'll stop here. I'm way over time. So I wanted to give, I think probably the next speaker might be waiting. So, but feel free to reach out to me. So as Dr. Mubai mentioned, I'm on LinkedIn. So, and our email address are pretty much easy. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dr. Fani and Abhimanyu. And Fani, as you said, of course, you and Abhi will be invited again and again.
Okay.
Yeah. Ritul, we can move ahead, please.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you once again for sharing your valuable perspective. It's been a pleasure having you both with us today. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Aridita D. Mukherjee, Director of Insight Health Communication Private Limited, Singapore and Mumbai, to the HEOR Vanguard Conference 2025. Dr. Aridita brings over a decade of experience in medical education, communication, and clinical research translation across multiple geographies, including India, the Middle East, the UK, and Australia. He has collaborated with leading pharmaceutical, biotech, and healthcare organizations to develop evidence-based educational content, AME module, and global congress updates across specialty therapeutic areas such as cardiology, oncology, and urology. With an extensive background as a medical communication specialist and medical education consultant, he has been instrumental in bridging gap between scientific evidence and clinical practice, empowering healthcare professionals through data-driven learning and meaningful engagement. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that we'll have a short Q&A session after the talk, so please feel free to share your question in the chat as we go along. She will be sharing her insights on bridging the gap between research and clinical practice through real-world data-driven learning. Join me in welcoming Dr. Anita V. Mukherjee. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the organizers and the speakers of this conference and organizers for inviting me as a speaker for speaking in a topic, a very interesting topic, bridging the gap between research and clinical practice through real-world data-driven learning. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to tell real-world data and real-world evidence is quite a buzzword since EMA and this one FDA has declared them as in their consensus. And so, but today I am going to touch upon how real-world data is important for clinicians. If you see in the image, there is research and clinical practice, and there is the real world data, which is bridging the gap, but still it's under construction. So there is a persistent delay in biomedical research and a delay in translating the findings into clinical care. So according to a study by Ballas and Boren in 2000, there is an average time to translate research and practice is 17 years. And I think there might be many other studies which is quoting the delay between the research and the clinical practice. There is sure a disconnect between efficacy, the trial-based evidence, and effectiveness, real-world outcomes. And so there is a continuous need for learning and real-world data and real-world evidence. So real-world evidence transform data into insight and insight into patient care. I thank you, my previous speakers, Dr. Fani and Abhimanyu, who has already touched upon real-world data and evidence. I will build upon in it. So FDA in 2018 defined real-world data as a data relating to patient health status or healthcare delivery collected outside our cities, like EHRs, registries, claims, and variables. And real-world data, then real-world evidence, clinical evidence that generates derived from the real-world analysis regarding usage, benefits, or risk of interventions. So examples are EHRs, disease registries, insurance claims, patient-reported outcomes, and digital variables. Like in many, the West has already worked upon these taking the data from the insurance claims. I know many of the developed Asian countries like Japan and Taiwan and Australia also, they are working around it. So it's a hang. Ritul, can you help me?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's like hang in my. It's not moving my slides. Okay, I got it. So then the research practice gap. So there is clinical trials and there is a clinical practice. The clinical practice is tightly controlled and it's relative selective populations and it's stringent. But in clinical practice, the patients, it's heterogeneous, multimorbid, real world complexity, patient coming with diabetes, hypertension. So the data from the clinical trials and clinical practice it's different. And the barriers are limited generalizability of the trial data, siloed data systems, regulatory and ethical constraints, and lack of analytical structure. So in a study by Zhang et al. In JAMA 2021, statins were proven efficacious in RCTs, but adherence and outcomes differ widely in real-world use. When it came to the adherence and outcomes, it totally different because we see different patients showing different results because every patient is different. So how real-world data bridges the gap? It generates insights on effectiveness, safety, and adherence post-approval, supports adaptive learning systems in healthcare, facilitates personalized care via data-driven prediction, and informs regulatory and reimbursement decisions. So like regulatory and reimbursed decisions, like for sometimes real world data, like some of the countries like Taiwan and Australia, they want nowadays 2 years follow-up data for the next the drug to be approved in the market. So we can see in the image, there is research mountain and clinical valley, and there is learning health system like a dam, and the insights are flowing, data is flowing like a river. So learning health system is a new concept, a system that learns from every patient encounters and feeds that knowledge back into practice. Like if like a doctor says, every patient is different. Every patient is like a book. They come with different. So if a drug is one drug like enfortumab will act in a different way in one patient, and the side effects will be adverse effects will be different, and another patient the side effect will be another sets of we can see some of them have skin reactions, some will not show skin reactions. So patient encounters that data and feeds that knowledge back into the practice. So the framework for RWD driven learning is a cycle. So data collection from the EHRs, registries, sensors, data curation and integration, advanced analyticals through AI, ML, NLP. There are a lot of like tools like OMP, common data models, like Python. They are collecting the data, evidence generation, clinical implementation, feedback loop to research. Coming to the like the example, here is an example of a cardiovascular research where this is a Sevotomy 53 trial where sexagliptin is where the safety and the efficacy of sexagliptin is done in diabetes patient. So versus the real world data on DPP4 inhibitors is quite different. Real world data confirm trial safety signals for heart failure. Another example is a Sweetheart trial, which is a big registry in the Sweden, where use of EHR-linked registries is done to improve adherence to secondary prevention post-MI. So real-world registries reduced mortality by integrating feedback into national guidelines. So coming to AI and machine learning in RWD, ML can identify hidden treatment response patterns. Predictive models improve risk stratification and early intervention. AI models predicting readmission and heart failure using EHR data. Like tools like TensorFlow, though I am not an expert in AI in using TensorFlow and PyTorch, but they are doing these nowadays with AI plus machine learning, better diagnosis and faster decisions. So recently there is an article, it's published on October 16, 2025, in a Forbes, inside the race to harness real-world data, who will build healthcare's most powerful platform. The promise of real-world data is profound. It could enable more inclusive clinical research, faster evidence generation, better regulatory submissions, and more personalized medicine. But that promise will only be fulfilled if the platforms building this ecosystem can execute on several fronts simultaneously. The stakes are high, but so is the potential. Much like the railroads of the 19th century, today's health data platforms are laying the tracks for a new kind of economy, one where insight, evidence, and innovation move faster and more freely than ever after. So I have included these from the Forbes, so I have referenced it. So there is no copyright for it. Now coming to how embedding clinical trials, how can we do that in the clinical practice? The concept of integrating clinical trials within real world clinical practice is not new. The whole philosophy should be the care should look like trials, and the trials should look like more care. So in NIH healthcare systems in 2012 launched a major initiative to strengthen the national capacity to implement cost-effective large-scale research studies that engage healthcare delivery organizations as research partners. And it is published recently in Dombeck C. et al. But there are continuous challenges. Despite this initiative, implementation remains limited across the healthcare systems. But there is no universal consensus embedding the clinical trial elements into clinical practice. So it is often pragmatic, often linked with the pragmatic trial design frameworks. So the literature often associate embedding trials being pragmatic as viewed through pragmatic explanatory continuum indicator summary precise to scale. Yet the threshold of what is considered pragmatic is not consistent. Now the rationale for embedding interventional trials. So again, this new concept, learning healthcare system perspective, but their trial designer listed 3 primary reasons for choosing to integrate interventional trials into clinical care versus conducting conventional clinical trials primarily within clinical research facilities or in healthcare facilities, but outside of the clinical care. First, designers explained that they implemented a learning system where they aim to narrow the gap between clinical care and the clinical research. Second, the designers explained that they design trials to evaluate treatment responses in real-world clinical practice settings under the treatment approaches in real-world clinical practice. So, third, designers say that they consider the potential cost savings associated with leveraging existing health networks, informatics, infrastructure, and previously curated EHR data. Some designers noted that the high costs of conducting conventional clinical trials can serve as a deterrent to research. So, cost efficiency, we should look into it while embedding the elements in the, and which is a very important thing which will influence the budget and all for the trials. Embedding trials within care pathways fosters sustainable real-world evidence generation. How we can do that with various stages, like in the phase, like pre-design and planning, how we can do that, like our stakeholder engagement, all the PI into the process, involving them, workflow mapping, site readiness assessment, feasibility survey, and the design, while designing, choose which trial elements to embed, specify data sources, design and consent, and randomization, and the planning of the stuffs and training of the stuffs beforehand. Training of all the stakeholders who will be participating in the trial, and the setup and site preparation, like IT and EHR modification. If there is any EHR related modification, we should do that, and training of clinical and research staff, data quality audit of clinical data, integrate screening and eligibility tools. And in the implementation state, embedded recruitment, eligibility, consent, and randomization in clinical workflow, deliver intervention within care setting, capture data via clinical and research systems, and monitoring and iteration. Monitoring with various metrics and evaluation, and gradually scaling up. Evaluate the embed success, identify which clinical trial elements worked well and which didn't, plan for reuse and wider rollout, and capture lessons learned and embed those things into the trial. Though this embedding the clinical trials is clinical trial elements in the clinical trials is not yet there is any guideline for it, but we can think in the future how to do that. So coming to some case studies, real world case studies, where real-world evidence being successfully used in clinical trials. Real-world evidence in clinical trials offer huge potential to change how studies are run. So here is a very interesting study by Salford Lung study. So the innovative Salford Lung studies are often showcased as great example of an RWE-based study. GSK sponsored study examined the safety and the efficacy of the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease patient. It involved over 2000, it included 2802 patients who came to their own physicians, and they excluded they have kept the exclusion criteria as 90%. So low exclusion criteria means 90% of the 90% of the screened patients were included in the study. The goal of the study was to collect data that reflected medicine taking behaviors and collect valid data with minimal disruption to normal care, while enrolling a large generalizable proportion of eligible population. Deemed a success, 93% of the patient participants remained for the duration of the study, and a number of conclusive clinical trial results were attained. So this is a classic example where real-world evidence proved beneficial rather than doing a long trial. Now coming to another case study, which is for the Avelumab approval, Avelumab is mainly a drug, immunotherapy approved for advanced urothelial cancer. But Avelumab is seen, there is no standard of care for metastatic Merkel cell carcinoma. This drug has shown effectiveness in the real world studies, like from the real world, since there is no standard of care, investigator used data generated from the EHRs on observed clinical outcomes in patient population that received chemotherapy to establish a benchmark. And after that, patient outcomes is validated, and that helped in FDA accelerated approval. So this is really a good example where the real world evidence is taken for the FDA approval. Now coming to the next case study, it's like the study is Patient Like Me, because Patient Like Me is a patient support group where there is large data of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So data from real world evidence can be used to save cost also, as I have discussed earlier, and concentrate clinical studies on more promising candidates. The case of Patient Like Me and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is an excellent example. Patients Like Me as an important personalized healthcare network, which is a patient body with a large ALS community. Using its database, researchers found that 9%, means 348 patients with ALS in the Patients Like Me reported using lithium carbonate, a drug which had shown promise in a small study, 16 treated patients with 28 controls, but which did not have regulatory approval. This created an opportunity to create a larger observational study using data gathered from this patient, which was matched to multiple control groups. In the end, no difference in disease progression was observed after 12 months between the overall study group and those patients in the lithium carbonate group, like 78 patients. Subsequent randomized studies reached the same conclusion: there was no clinical effect in the overall population. So this helped in reducing the cost of a big clinical trial. So real-world evidence integrates real-world data into clinical research, enabling more representative, efficient, and impactful studies through implementation challenges, though implementation challenges persist. Now coming to which data can be used in RWE studies. Not all data is acceptable for RWE studies. Submitters must demonstrate that their data is of sufficient quality, often by the following the HAND framework. So HAND framework is showing components like conformance, completeness, and plausibility. So conformance is, does your data meet specified regulatory standards? The data must align with regulatory models. FDA and EMA require adherence to data standards, audit trials, and sequencing archiving. and it should be complete and plausible. All are required data elements present and accounted for. So the ensures minimal missing data. Registries must include follow-up processes for data quality. Plausibility, are the data values believable and truthful? Validates authenticity, automation with variable data and validation processes enhance credibility. So FDA and EMA emphasize harmonized data formats and terminologies. Both agencies issue guidance on data authenticity and reliability. High quality RWE depends on data that is conformant, complete, and plausible, ensuring credibility for regulatory decision making. Recently, another study is published where the topic is, can real-world data from hospital information system be directly utilized for efficacy study and analysis of data time points. It's published by Jiajing Lo et al. At Journal of Evidence-Based Medicine. And the study concluded that examination records are mostly concentrated early after admission, promising strong baseline but weak follow-up data. Uneven timing, limited end of hospitalization tests reduce the accuracy of outcome evaluations. Aligning and extending repeated measurements can better reflect treatment effectiveness. Transparency in reporting exact test time points enhance reproducibility and reduces reporting bias. Preliminary findings highlight the need for improved temporal coverage, data completeness, and methodological development to address temporal heterogeneity in real-world data studies. So now coming to the question, like, can real-world data from hospital information systems be directly utilized for efficacy study? As of now, it cannot. So what are the challenges and ethical considerations? The challenges are data quality in the data, receiving the data quality and interoperability, bias, representativeness, privacy, consent, and patient informed consent and governance and regulatory acceptance by the FDA and EMA. So we need transparent, reproducible analytical pipelines data. So the future direction, integration of RWD into clinical decision support systems, expansion of real-world pragmatic trials, enhanced collaboration between academia, industry, and regulators, and development of global learning networks. So the vision is a continuously learning healthcare ecosystem. Coming to the conclusion, RWD and RWE accelerate translation of discovery to practice, learning health system operationalize continuous improvement, bridging this gap, better, faster, more personalized care. So the takeaway is every patient's experience becomes part of the evidence base. Thank you all. So yeah, we can take some questions.
Thanks, Dr. Aridita, for the wonderful session. Please feel free to ask questions and drop in your chat box.
Yes, guys, if you have any questions, please drop in the chat box.
Maybe I can ask Dr. Aridita.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Aridita, for the wonderful session. I know you are a trained doctor by your training. Now you are a successful entrepreneur. So how has been the journey so far? If you can just tell us a little more to us about your inspiring journey, so that we can also learn from it.
Okay, so starting from I am a dentist by training, and after that I joined medical service, and I have done a residency in AIMS also. So I was like now coming to the real world data and all. So I have seen when I used to go to my government, like I was going to the government service, hundred of patients every day, morning 9 a.m. sharp. They used to waiting for getting treated, and they are coming from villages, coming in autos, jeeps and all, hanging just to see in a primary healthcare center. Nearby there was no facility, so I'm blessed to work with that. But gradually I shifted to, because I have done my MBA in healthcare. So after that, from the college days, I have started one company. It was related to drugs. So I started going to all the Gujarat and all facilities in Solan and all, and collaborated with them. And I started my company in Kolkata during my college days. So after that, though after it was going really good, but because of some personal issues, I have to drop from that collaboration. But because of my personal issue that so because my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum, and I have to leave the company, and the valuation I sold to some two doctors. Then I moved to Mumbai, and there, after I took a short break, taking care of my kid because he was in the spectrum and all. And after that, I started working with various medical societies like Insignia Learning and Open Health in UK. So we started working with the societies and all, and we collaborated with the doctors and all. Then after a brief 8 years, I shifted to Singapore, and I started my own company here, and I'm working with ESCO, EAS, European Atherosclerosis Society, then Singapore Cardiac Society, as you know. Now I'm working with Singapore Endocrine Society. So we are also working in various generating real world data from large database of endocrinologists, and publishing it soon. So that is my journey in medical education so far. Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing. And I recently attended one cardiology conference, right, and yeah, many other, which Dr. Arijita has been very instrumental in organizing across, and now she's expanding globally. So kudos to her. Congratulations, Dr. Arijita. I see one question. Maybe I can only read out. How do you address discrepancies when real-world results don't align with trial outcomes? If you can see Dr. Arijita in the chat window.
Yeah. So how do you address discrepancies in real world results? So real discrepancies in the real world data, from the designing time only, we have to make sure like we are taking the data correctly and talking with the investigators and all. So if there is any discrepancy, we should go and talk with the investigators and all, see what are the why it happened. So we should work from the beginning in the planning period only. How can we address the discrepancies in the real world? Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Arijita, for your time. Ritul, maybe we can thank Dr. Arijita and proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Arijita, for such an inspiring and insightful session. Your perspective on integrating real-world data into learning truly highlighted how research can drive better patient outcomes and more informed clinical decisions.
Your voice is not coming, Ritul. Your voice is very low.
You can try without earpods, actually. Yeah, now say something.
Am I clear, ma'am?
Yeah, now you're clear.
Please try this only. This is awesome.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for that interruption, but yeah. We are honored to welcome Mr. Suraj Madhavam, co-founder of InvoCept Global Solution and an accomplished leader in clinical research operation, to conduct a workshop on global application in real-world evidence, the changing landscape. With over 2 decades of experience spanning clinical operation, data management, clinical research framework, his work reflects a deep commitment to advancing evidence-based healthcare through innovative and capable solutions. Currently serving as the adjunct faculty at Manipal College of Pharmaceutical Science, he continues to guide the next generation of clinical researchers with his strategic insights and industry acumen. Before we begin, a quick reminder, we'll have a short Q&A interaction at the end of the workshop, so please keep your question ready. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Suraj Madhavam. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ritul, for this introduction. Am I audible? I'm trying without any headset or something, just to be clear.
Yeah, sir, you are audible.
Actually, that's the best. I think
Okay.
I should also remove mine. Yeah.
So I'll share my screen. Let me know once you're able to see this.
We can see.
We can see. Great. Lovely. So I know before I start, I wanted to mention that I'm coming from a CRO background, which is typically involved in prospective conduct of clinical studies, phase 2, 3, 4, and PMS studies, and then prospective real-world evidence studies. That is the primary experience that InvoCept has. We have been collaborating with a couple of EMR-based solution companies, wherein the database is being provided, and through that we have the analysis done, strategy put in, and then evaluate how this. It's a retrospective study in that case, in case of an EMR coming in. Now, while I made this slide, I understand the first 2 sessions by Funny and then Aridita did cover majority of this. So this would help us to go faster with certain slides, and probably we can do it with more of an interactive session. I have brought in a case study that we did as part of our real world evidence prospective study that we did in India. So we may speak something from an Indian perspective, see how things are different on Indian aspects. We are still involved in RWE, but how is it different from global, and what steps can be taken for India to align with the global standards coming in. Maybe that's more of a discussion mode which we can take in, so that utilizing the time for something better, ad hoc topics being brought in. So I start now.
Thanks, Suraj. Just one point before that, and InvoCept Global Solutions is also one of our industrial partners and collaborators for this conference. And thank you, Suraj, and thanks, Dr. Manish Rajak, for the support. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so these were the agenda topics I had brought in. I would quickly brush through the first 3, which probably, because these have been covered, there will be some points which will be slightly different. I will just hold on to that. So understanding real world evidence studies, I believe Funny and Abhimanyu had covered it in detail. Aridita did have a top, additional information given in. So from a controlled clinical trials, the difference is controlled clinical trials is more to avoid variables. They are more focused on finding out the effectiveness, the efficiency of the drug, as well as the safety aspect. So they tend to control this by restricting a large a number of variables coming in. So they have specific to that indication with a lot of exclusion criteria that the patients who have been tested should not have additional comorbid conditions. They may not be on additional concomitant medications which might interact with this drug. So they will try to rule it out so that they get minimum variables, and that will help them understand whether this drug is effective, is showing its efficacy as intended, and it's safe because the risk benefit ratio to be done. So classical example would be during COVID. It was a series of strict regulation trials being done to find out, but the real world evidence study did help on a longer run to find out whether how is it going on a longer run, because the safety aspect in a clinical trial was not really done in a very, they didn't get a long period to do it. So the current studies are going on to understand how these are working, whether it's effective, whether there are new strains coming out, where improvement in this vaccination required. So all these informations are being collected. So this becomes a good example to talk about how RW could complement the phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials coming in. Treatment understanding, again, from a clinical practice, Aridhita did cover this with examples coming in. So, one example I thought was different, so I could speak on this, was palbociclib, which is typically used for metastatic breast cancer, HR positive and HER2 negative subjects, patients being tried on. But men with this particular breast cancer are very rare. So a clinical trial per se on men is not feasible because you'll have a very small sample size getting in. You need a large sample size, but you may not get that much to complete. The study might go on for long. So that was not done. But from a real world evidence, from the EHR data that was analyzed, the couple of data that was scrutinized did find that the whatever criteria used for the women in the clinical trial is matching with this, and thereby they got this indication cleared that palbociclib is useful not only for the women, metastatic breast cancer in women, but also in men who are with HR positive and HER2 negative cases. Patient outcome wise, again, alpelisib, which is a product used in sort of a pick three, give me a second. Yeah. So PIK3CA related overgrowth spectrum. So this was something, an expanded access program. So expanded access program is after the control, clinical trial is done, the patients are allowed to continue on this until an alternative is available or until the product gets approved. So part of this particular data, more data was made available, and that really allowed them to have this considered. So this is considered as a real world data coming in from a clinical setup, because after the study is over, these patients are actually allowed to continue on more other concomitant medication, etc. So the additional data did help them to give in more the approach taken further onto the approval. So regulatory insights was taken in from this particular study. So I move forward now. This, I think, has already been covered for real world evidence. What are the sources? So I'm not going to touch much of this. Differences wise, we did speak about traditional versus RWE standards. The traditional clinical trials are more rigid, considering that they want minimal variables to impact the outcome of the study, whereas in real world evidence studies, these are real world settings. You could have incomplete visits, you could have missing data, you could have more concomitant medications, real comorbid conditions impacting. So that's the reality which comes in. So that's why real world evidence data, real world evidence studies really complement in reality to the controlled clinical trials, and then thereby able to give broader patient insights that represents diverse populations, long-term outcomes, which are typically not seen in controlled clinical trials, because controlled clinical trials maximum may run for a year up to 3, 4, or 5, but this is much more. Registries tend to collect over decades data being collected, that giving insights which subgroups could be more sensitive, which I'll be covering with a couple of slides in from now on. And of course, clinical decision making being easier with additional data coming in. So current global approaches to RWE, there is a lot of global recognition that is coming in. Regulatory agencies have started coming out, accepting the real world evidence for supporting an additional decision making. Could be from a safety perspective, could be from an efficacy perspective. Additionally, label approvals, like I said, palbociclib being approved for males as well. That's an additional label which has come in. So FDA, EMA, and even China for that matter have brought in frameworks considering how RWE could be utilized and applied to make the decision making further. There are other regulatory bodies are also coming out with the frameworks. We hopefully should see this pan-global, how this is being utilized. Of course, major challenge coming in is country to country, region to region variation that are coming in. What are the possible variations coming in? Data availability differences that comes in, that is accessibility. So, Europe seems to have been controlled with GDPR, US gets controlled with HIPAA. So crossing the data, getting this data outside their boundaries remains a challenge. How to have them interact with the other country data to make it more large, more harmonious coming in. These are certain challenges that comes in, and how do we mitigate that? That is to be discussed further. So collaborations and consortium. So I think these were some of the points which I think Fanny and Abhimanyu did talk about a little bit, being that how can we harmonize things. So multi-stake engagement coming in. Consortia are one of the possibilities seen in where various consortia across the world, primarily with European region that we see majorly, they have these consortia. India also has certain consortium for certain indications coming in. As Aridita mentioned, there are societies which have been formed for certain conditions coming in. So all these can come together, collaborate as much as possible for a smoother data sharing, which gives a larger purpose with respect to payback to the society, making clinical decision better, and thereby having a continuous oversight on this particular drug activity being shown throughout. So standardization is very important. It's because it deals with human data, it deals with the patient data. Privacy becomes quite important, and even though with technology is coming in part, ethical and governance issues has to be addressed. There are various challenges. Say in case of a retrospective data, the consent part definitely remain a concern. It is a concern. For not having the consent properly, the patient need to be made aware that their data is going to go across for analysis, though it is anonymous. Yet that option for the patient should be available there. Technological innovations, I'm not a tech guy, but what I understand from the literature going around is there is a lot of predictive modeling being brought in with AI and machine learning coming in, which enhances. So the advantage of predictive model for a real world evidence is we do understand that in practice, the chances of missing data, chances of incomplete data is there because the patient may or may not come to the follow-up visits as required by a controlled clinical trial. So in this case, how those missing data can be predicted, and even as mentioned, by, I believe Arita did mention about saying that in case of like, say, I think it was Funny who mentioned that case of Alzheimer's case, saying that is there a predictive possibility that the patient by this time can have a worsening and thereby actions taken. So these are the advantages which can be brought in with machine learning and predictive modeling being incorporated with. Integrated electronic records. This is the thing which is currently happening. In India, we do see a lot of fitness companies coming out with continuous glucose monitoring. The Apple Watches are being talked about detecting an abnormal heartbeat and thereby giving a reminder or giving an SOS to the nearest guardian recorded there. So these are certain examples which has come in. How do we make use of this on a continuous basis? And that helps for the clinician to make an informed decision so that how the patient is going in. It becomes again a customized treatment option for the patient based on their continuous data being made available, seeing that how the glucose control is brought in. So these are classic examples getting merged with EHR. Now, when we talk about EHR, this becomes more on the Western part, Europe and other developed nations where EHR coming. From an Indian perspective, again, this becomes a challenge because we not every hospital is into an EHR mode. The large tertiary care hospitals may be, but in case of secondary or the primary one, we're still probably partially into an EMR way, which probably is not integrated in the larger database. Challenges, of course, as I think Funny did cover on this as well, that the volume becomes too much to handle. So how to avoid errors in handling it, how to handle missing part, how to ensure there is a quality aspect not compromised on it. The security and the privacy is not compromised on that aspect. Plus interoperability, that is, it could be from different EHR system that is coming in, different set of data coming in, how still it can be done. They mentioned they do have softwares with them, which ensures that there is a smooth flow. We look forward to have some session from them where they can show the workflow, how the data flows and how it ends up with analysis coming into this from facilitating a good clinical decision making aspect. Challenges and opportunities, how probably we can make it better. Importance of data quality, because I think there was a question to Aridita before I started and saying that what if the data doesn't really support the clinical trial outcome. So this could be a possibility with the poor data quality that could come in or incomplete data that come in. So it's important that high quality data is looked into. If you find a scenario where there are a lot of missing data coming in, we probably will not be able to do a prediction on that. We may not really able to take an inference from there. So it is important for an accurate diagnosis and treatment plans to be brought in, continuing on the safety and effectiveness monitoring. And of course, the larger intent is to have informed regulatory decisions taken in. standardized data collection. So right from when a protocol is being designed for what type of data is being collected, how long are we collecting it, to have a consistent input received in, it is important to have this planned well in advance so that we have minimal errors coming in, maximum methodologies gets harmonized, the data quality is not compromised, and of course the regulatory compliance is followed in. Credibility to curation. Data curation is another aspect. With existing data, how do you take out the best one to come out with an potential inference being taken in, and thereby supporting the decision-making aspect taken care of. Privacy and ethical consideration, this is definitely there. Being in digital world, we have to ensure that the privacy aspect is not compromised. Ethical aspect, like, so you need to have ethical institutional ethics committee approval coming in picture that this project is definitely valid enough, subject consent in case of a prospective one, taking care of it. This is more of in a similar manner. I would skip this slide for now. Future directions in global real-world evidence applications. So again, Fanny did mention about digital biomarkers coming in picture. These are certain vital aspects. How do we utilize the data coming out of from these biomarkers? A lot of biomarkers are collected as part of regulated clinical studies, phase 2, phase 3. And how do we utilize this in a day-to-day clinical setting as well? Digital biomarkers could help us in understanding and giving up better precision and personalized medicine to the particular subject coming in. AI and blockchain does add from a technology perspective. So tailoring treatments is the personalized or precision-based medicine which is coming in. This becomes an advantage from a long-term data. I believe Aridhita did cover on this, Sweden's Sweetheart Registry, which does really talk about a long-term perspective of from a cardiovascular diseases, saying that certain subgroups that comes in to look into anticoagulants, which could be which anticoagulant is better for that type of patient, depending on the existing data that they have already collected over the period of decades. It's more than a decade that they have been collecting this. So that's an advantage. It becomes more precision-based or personalized medicine that goes in. Advancing precision medicine, again, couple more examples to talk about. There are cases where the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation patient registry did release out certain data in which the rare condition like cystic fibrosis has understood the pattern to look into the drug efficacy and side effects, thereby an optimal dosing to be done, because these are dose dependent. The side effects are dose dependent. The efficacy is dose dependent. How to optimize it based on this data? They are able to customize it based on the patient data coming in. Improving, again, another cancer registry study that talked about certain types of cancer, stage 2 and stage 3 cancers can work out with adjuvant chemotherapy, whereas only there are certain cases like stage 2 with T-stage, the tumor staging of 3, only a surgery is sufficient. You don't really need to get into a chemotherapy mode. So these were certain planned approaches to be taken, and that is, of course, coming in from a very large registry that has been following the patterns of treatment, so that the best of the best is made available to the patient. Of course, I did talk about previously, Fanny and Aridhita did speak about that, how to ensure to harmonize standards and multi-stakeholder involvement coming in. So it could be within the country, between the country, where data sharing could happen. We have to foster this particular aspects. This is a very high level case study that Innocept had carried out a clinical study for an Indian pharma, Bharat Serum Vaccines. That data has been made available in publication. That's why I'm able to share it across here. It was a business need where an ongoing real world evidence study on 20,000 subjects across 3,000 doctors, clinics, secondary care hospital, tertiary care hospital required were considered. The intent was to find out what is the prevalence and sensitization rate of Rh negative women in India. As part of this, this was a prospective clinical trial, clinical study as an RWE done. India, unfortunately, we are still out of pocket market. We don't have an government's provided insurance. Definitely there is a limit with that, but majority are going out of pocket. So as part of this, what happens, there is no real access to claims data happening in getting a uniform analysis. There is So we have to rely on a prospective or a retrospective study from a clinician. A clinician plays an important role in providing this data. So there were almost close to 2,000 doctors that were onboarded on the study, and we have currently enrolled around 15,000 subjects. The advantage of this particular study was this was done to understand how is the prevalence and sensitization happening in, and there were a couple of safety incidents which had occurred, and DCGI wanted the sponsor to work out on a larger data and find it out. But during this, they also found out there were a lot of off-label applications of this. That is, this particular anti-D molecule for preventing the sensitization was prescribed for typically, as per the approved label, was after the postnatal care being injected so that the sensitization minimizes. But there has been a lot of cases seen that even antenatal application were being done, and that data when provided before DCGI. So this is a landmark decision made where the client, the BSV, were able to get an additional indication, not only just an postnatal, but antenatal also. So this again shows that RW is very much utilized in India, though not from a claims data, not from an EHR data, but more from a prospective, and then certain EMR companies that manage and retrospective data done. But it's not a pan-India thing. If a retrospective comes in, hospital to hospital systems vary. And I think that's where we need to look forward to seeing that how India can also join this global way of doing with an EHR coming into picture. I do recall, I think Risha may be able to point out a little more with ABHA coming in. We do have ABHA, where ABHA has been with the interest is a centralized ID being maintained and data centralized being collected. So far, that awareness still needs to be made, because I was made aware through Richa during a symposium 2 years back. She mentioned about ABHA as an centralized data collection way, which could really revolutionize the RWE concept in India. Hopefully, we could see that date that every hospital would have this integration with ABHA, and thereby the data made available for central analysis. So that's pretty much from my side. The conclusion, yes, we are talking about transforming healthcare, coming in real world evidence, which I think my previous two speakers also spoke about. Global perspectives, yes, that was very much there. And I did try to connect a little bit with the Indian aspect, which is missing, or which has a lot of potential to contribute to the larger information towards drug care, healthcare, then embracing innovations with tech aspects, and of course, overcoming challenges of data sharing, the quality compromise, privacy, and the integration challenges coming in. So that's pretty much from my side, please.
Thank you, Suraj, for the amazing session. Guys, please feel free to ask your questions. And Suraj, in the meantime, people unmute themselves or type in chat window. Let me ask you a few questions. Okay. So when I started my entrepreneur journey, I remember you and Manish, both the founders of Invercept, gave me a lot of advice as per your experience, right? How this journey would be, how this would treat me. And both of you have been kind enough to check on me on timely basis. How am I doing? How is the journey happening for me? So what advice would you give to everyone, or some of the takeaways from your entrepreneurial journey, if you can share that, please?
Sure. I think this is continuation of my speaking. In the last 2 days, I've been speaking in Manipal on my entrepreneur journey.
Awesome.
So I'm glad that I'm continuing that here as well. It's definitely an interesting aspect. Being an entrepreneur is a challenge, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of bandwidth. It gives you a lot of flexibility to come out. You are within yourself. You have the freedom to express without worrying about, if you are otherwise in a large firm or a small firm, you might be restricted to that. But here the horizons are very wide. You can explore any part of it. That's where I've been very much core clinical trials during my last 15 years before venturing into entrepreneurship. But then once I moved on to entrepreneurship, the necessity was that I had to pivot towards an RWE type of studies, which gave me greater insights that life does happen beyond phase 3. Life does happen before phase 2. And as funny as well showed in saying that how the decision making comes in, even the economic modeling. I think this morning when Anush spoke about the economic modeling being brought in, these are larger insights which otherwise I probably would not have been exposed to, because I would have been restricted within my vertical. So that's a larger perspective. When you bring out yourself, you get a real free world to talk about. So that's the advantage. But the side, there could be moments of anxiety coming in. Things may not be moving the way you anticipated to move. So patience, that risk appetite has to be very much there. You have to prepare yourself to take risks. And so sort of a calculated risk model has to be built in. To what extent can you go without a project, or how long can you sustain trying to get a breakthrough? So these are certain planning which you have to do. The better thing, in my case, it was more of an serendipity or accidental exposure to an entrepreneur journey. But people who are planning it out to do, I would definitely welcome them. Probably you can keep in certain connects before you move in. Speak to your fellow colleagues who have been in this industry or the industry which you're trying to venture in. Connect with them, understand the nuances, understand the challenges, prepare yourself better. But yes, along with that, you need to have two more things: resilience, because you might fail when you start. You may get an initial success and then have a plateau and fall down, but don't hesitate to get up, because that's what is success. As after each failure, getting up and not hesitating to fight back will be considered as the best nature of resilience. And of course, patience. Nothing comes that easy. We always look at seeing that somebody raised X times the valuation, Y times the valuation. For a product company, it could work, but for a service sector like us, it takes time. It takes almost more than a decade to establish yourself and come in. You may be lucky, it can become faster if there are collaboration. Like instance, Invocept has collaborated with DualSphere right now. So it's a sort of complementary services coming to each other. Maybe even in case of a phase 2, phase 3 study coming in, we can still tell the client, you need any other services on economic modeling, etc. We have our counterpart who can support you with. So these are certain things which can make you a one-stop shop. And again, another major point coming in is, when you are started, you are small, you're just a brand being established, do not hesitate to collaborate, because that becomes large. No one person can achieve everything in life. It was those days where one person made a big brand, but now it's a crowded market. So that has to be open. Collaborate even with your so-called competitors. Maintain that connect and understand how it is. We never know how competitors can come together and collaborate at times. So always keep a very open mind.
Thanks, Suraj. And the other day, I was attending one of the seminars in Singapore itself, and it was a startup meet, I would say. And the tips or takeaways from that one also were, entrepreneurs should never hesitate to connect and collaborate. Should never say no. That do you want to meet somebody? Yes, because not every meeting is a business deal. It's all about knowing people, and I think this journey, like you said, is also giving me kind of that independence where I can plan my day, right? And I can take the risks. I can go all out and learn anything that is happening related to my business or just from my knowledge perspective. I remember when I started just a few months back, I was kind of had very limited knowledge on AI. Now I leave no stone unturned in attending whatever workshop, webinar, or conference that is happening in Singapore to learn more about it. So that I think that's the difference that I can also feel.
And I think this conference itself is the example, right? You were able to collaborate with Ajit and team and come together. So it's a larger thing coming in, and who's getting benefited? We are getting benefit. Of course, the youngsters who are attending this, they get that insights, what's really happening around the world. I could get insights from something on economic modeling, which was something more theoretical. Today, I could get the practical aspect, how it is applied. I did connect to Anuj on LinkedIn soon after saying that I would like to be in touch with you to understand how this is. It's very interesting. These are aspects which one need to look. I'm really happy that the attendance has been excellent for the last 3 days here. People are keen to learn, and that curiosity should always be there. Curious to learn, curious to evaluate and assimilate that. I do see one query from Venkatesh.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions which have come to you, Suraj. Are you able to see
Can I
them?
read it for you, sir?
I do have open. Let me see who's the one. The first one. Yeah, I think first one is, how can emerging markets like
Yes.
India strengthen their positions in the global RWE? So of course, this is from Savkat Rajvi. So of course, this is a very large position. We are a very large country with lot of diversity involved, within the country, with multiple states, different cultural aspect, different influences coming in. So how do we do this? The best way to do this is to get an integrated data integration. I think ABHA is something which, Richa, you might speak more about, because that's a potential one which could integrate, get us on a common platform coming in. Otherwise, we tend to get we'll never be able to integrate. But say, in case of my case coming in, I am a diabetic patient. I happen to visit a certain doctor for diabetes. At the same time, because of diabetes, I might have certain skin problems. I go to a dermatologist. What happens is these two data doesn't speak to each other. The skin doctor happens to say you have a lot of sugar coming out of your urine, but that's because I'm taking dapagliflozin, which will push out the sugar through the urine, and that's again a chance for a fungal infection coming in. But they don't understand. They probably that's where I feel I'm the owner of my data. I need to have access so that they can mention. And how do we get that integration coming in picture? So the same thing happens. Being an out-of-pocket market, I have the liberty of going to any doctor at any time. We don't have the concept of family doctor anymore. That is not really existing. So the most nearest clinic could be for that issue. Sometimes you will have a gastro problem. You might go to a gastroenterologist direct. So I was on metformin. Metformin causes its own side effects as well. So, but the gastroenterologist is saying, you have a lot of bloating. How do you do that? So that interaction is really not happening, and there is a lot of power within it. How do we do this? This is a question, larger question. I mean, I wish I could have had the answer, but I think a centralized system where my data gets carried with me will be the best way to have a common one. Every patient has access to their own data. So when they go to another doctor, their data still gets carried forward. They have the entire history, what is happening to this patient. That should really help from there, I think, yeah, this also probably answers Sharmila's question also. How do we ensure registries? Of course, there are a lot of registries, a lot of academic institutes coming out with registries coming in, speaking to each other. More of the, when some registries are being talked about in conferences, the other hospitals could also contribute. Let me join your registry. So it should be more of a collaboration coming in, and we can really, in spite of the limitation of the EHR model in India not implemented, I believe these collaborations through registries in various sectors can be brought in. How do you ensure your RWE findings are generalizable to the population underrepresented in real-world data sets like rural? This is a fantastic question, because most of the real-world evidence studies, we tend to restrict with tier 1 cities and maximum tier 2. But the one which I talked about as a case study, we've gone until tier 3, tier 4. Tier 4 to the extent where my clinical monitor going there takes 3 days to reach there. From Mumbai to Ahmedabad to Rajkot and then further interior. It's very difficult to reach out, but those doctors have participated. So sometimes, it could probably come in by more of awareness. When the first interim analysis of this data took place, we hardly had around 800 doctors from the tier 1. But after the first interim analysis in a gynecological society where this was presented, and we were, as a CRO, we were also there to pitch in and get them onboarded, we went up to 1,200. And in the subsequent conference, when this was spoken about, we got further drilled down. So tier 3, tier 4 representation has come in. So with the one which I'm talking about, rhythm study, it's actually covered almost all remote part of the country. But yes, how do we do it for every case? It needs to be done through awareness. It needs to be done through the societies. It's to be done with various councils, various therapeutic area councils which are there. The doctors who are registered into it, they need to be made aware of that there is a potential that you can share your data. If they can get this done through, probably they could have a paper-based solution. If they can get into a digital solution, but the data can be centrally done. I mean, that's a very out of mind thought process that I was bringing in. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Mirza. That's what you had in your mind. Yeah, I think that completes this.
One more question, Suraj.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
How do you keep the stress away?
I talk to people. I think these days the best way to do is I talk to different people. I also do a cross-domain interaction, someone from engineering background or someone from another dynamics, just to understand how the pain is. Because, sometimes you need a different shoulder to cry on, to say this is it. And so my Manipal meet was with one of the successful entrepreneurs who had a successful exit. On the paper, it was success. But when we spoke, he failed twice in almost 6 years. And the third time he came with lessons learned. He went very particular, one thing at a time, and that hit him. So sometimes it gives you a perspective, right? We tend to handle too many things at once just to see what would work. He did that as well. His intent was to make money first 2 times, but when he realized money is not the point he needs to go, that's when he got the money. So, sometimes those insights are helpful. He's much younger chap, but it really gives us a energy to understand what we can improvise. So talking, connecting with different people, always. It need not be an entrepreneur always. You can speak to any person who has almost a 10 plus years of experience in a company. They would have that diverse experience coming in. That would happen. So I'm always open for hearing out from others to say what is that has made them come out of their challenges. I try to implement a little bit. And then, of course, I stay spiritual. And so I connect with quite a few people who talk about the spiritual aspects, which keeps me more positive throughout. That's something which I try to self-help in that aspect.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of the entrepreneurs a few weeks back, and what he taught me was money is the byproduct of entrepreneurial journey. If you are working only for money, then it's not your journey, right?
There
You're
are
there.
different aspects of making money, right? There are a lot of illegal
Yes.
ways of making money if you want, but money shouldn't be the area to be looked
Exactly.
into.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the time factor, the flexibility factor is which really makes the entrepreneur journey more interesting, because you have so much. And say it's been 7 years for InvoCept now.
Yes.
We have built a team of almost 30 people now. Each vertical has 5 to 6 people within them. So now there is that, it's like more on autopilot mode. I don't need to sit and get the work done. It happens. So there has been a couple of meetings which is being running even in my absence. And that's what I believe that is a very good successful thing, that I've empowered them to get them. They are getting empowered. So all the ground level person is also getting empowered. It's like a flat structure we are maintaining. So that really adds to the point also, right? You get your time to think something new, challenging. See that if that works to your business, get it on and try it out. So, one classical example, if I have time to talk about.
Yeah, please.
So the first time we were approached for a meta-analysis, systemic literature review, which a CRO typically is not getting into, but that was the year where our medical writing had to be amplified. We thought of that we should improvise. I have never done a meta-analysis in my life. I have never done an SLR. But what happened is I went back to my professor, who is a PhD guide. I went to him and he said, okay, I can help you out with this. And we could get in, and then some of his scholars did help us out in getting this project completed. And that one of the PhD scholars has joined us, and she's helping us out. So we are built in that vertical. So sometimes, that out of box thinking works in, which probably was not there initially or restricted. Here I could take that. And the client was aware. We are going out to a academic institute and coming in. We did openly mention to them. They also appreciated. What they wanted is the work to be done. The work was done. So that's something, a decision making. You become more empowered in taking a decision there. That's the strength.
I agree. I completely agree to that one. Yeah. So, Ritul, over to you. Maybe we can thank Suraj and close pre-lunch session.
Yes, sure, ma'am. Thank you so much, Mr. Madhavan, for that insightful and engaging session. Your perspective on the evolving RWE landscape truly broadened our understanding of global research application. That wraps us a really insightful morning. We had some amazing session filled with fresh ideas, inspiring discussion, and a glimpse into how research and real-world data are shaping the future of healthcare. It's been a great start to day 3, and there's still so more to look forward to this afternoon. We'll now take a short lunch break, so grab a bite, relax, and recharge. The next round of session promises to be as exciting and engaging. Thank you so much and join.
2 p.m. IST sharp. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.